Regular meeting of the Menifee City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilmember August. Councilmember Furman. Here. Councilmember Denver. Here. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Here. Mayor Mann.
Here.
Thank you.
We have words of inspiration tonight from Pastor Scott Ganis of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. Pastor?
Please stand. Let us pray. Lord God, as we pray for all who are in authority, we thank you especially for the form of government given us in our beloved country. Give us the grace with our fellow citizens to value the officers and the magistrates of our government as those sent by you. Instill in us that respect and honor that is due them. Lord, endow them with wisdom for their several duties, the spirit of sacrifice for the common welfare, with mercy and justice, with uprightness and kindliness. Correct the evils of selfishness, greed, a vain desire for honor, or abuse of power among us, as well as in other governments of the world. Grant that the true purposes of government may prevail, safeguarding peace and prosperity, so that we may live soberly and uprightly in your sight and have opportunity to tell of you and of your kingdom. These petitions I direct to you, because in Jesus I know you as my Father and Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Councilmember August, would you lead us in the pledge?
Please join me in the pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. We have no presentations for this evening. We have approval of meeting minutes. Are there any modifications to the minutes from the June 18th meeting? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. On to agenda modification. Madam Clerk, do we have any modifications to the agenda tonight?
Sir, only as noted on your agenda.
Oh, for the continuance of the public hearings?
2 items, yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Are there any other items for that? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. On to public comment. Call the first speaker, please.
Planning Commissioner Mark Metelko.
Hi, good evening. I'm here today to talk about ordinances. I know that the city is, ordinance council is trying to pass a bunch of new ordinances. And before we do so, I would think it'd be wise to take Councilman Furman's advice, as when he became elected in 2010 and he was put in 2011, he's constantly been saying, have the Planning Commission review ordinances. And we've had many Planning Commission meetings canceled, but saying there was no business while we could have been doing the city's work. And the reason I bring it up is I did find one that is kind of disturbing. I refer to Government Code Section 3101.5. No legislative body shall require a regulatory license or impose a regulatory license fee with respect to cafe musicians. And that would refer to City Ordinance number 2009-60, which would make this one illegal under state law. So that's just one that I found so far. So I think we need to take Councilmember Furman's advice and go ahead and start reviewing the ordinances we have, make sure they're legal and good for City of Menifee before we start passing other ones that could fall into the same category. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Metelko. Next speaker, please.
Katie Manier.
Good evening. Tonight I want to read what the Sierra Club has to say about sewage sludge. This topic keeps coming up and it gets thrown in the trash somewhere or something. Sierra Club says, although the Sierra Club supports the use of pathogen and pollutant-free treated human waste as fertilizer, such a practice is only possible by separating the industrial waste stream from human waste. Sewage treatment plants are not designed to separate waste and to produce fertilizer. They were designed to remove pollutants from the wastewater. Many of these pollutants concentrate in the resilient sludge. As a result, the exact composition of any sludge is unknown. Urban sludges are highly complex, unpredictable, biologically active mixture of organic material and human pathogens, some of which are resistant to antibiotics and cannot be destroyed through composting. Sludge can contain thousands of industrial chemicals, including dozens of carcinogens, hormone-disrupting chemicals, toxic metals, dioxins, radionuclides, and other persistent bioaccumulative poisons. The Sierra Club opposes using municipal sewage sludge as a compost ingredient. The Federal Clean Water Act defines sewage sludge as a pollutant. I believe one of our planning commissioners, Mr. Earl Phillips, stated in his bio on the city website that he's a member of the Sierra Club. Seems his opinions on sludge vary greatly from what the club's belief is. Mr. Phillips has certificates, but does he have a medical degree to make the statement that it is safe? Dr. David Lewis is a well-respected doctor and has degrees, not certificates, to make the statement that this valley has the worst contamination he has seen and worse than Love Canal. Tom, is it true that you were told recently by a Loma Linda staff member that an infectious disease physician wears a mask from the hospital to his car to protect himself from viruses and bacteria in the air when the wind blows?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Now this city is planning a new public high school on land that may be contaminated. Will you be testing the soil like you did with Santa Rosa Academy, using the same company and looking for the same material? People at Santa Rosa are sick and nobody cares. Has anybody been to the school? Has anybody checked to see what illnesses are going on? Maybe people are afraid to speak up for fear of losing their jobs, or parents are just ignorant to the fact, even though I've been speaking here for 4 years about this, but when they were here to approve Santa Rosa Academy, they didn't care to listen. Then I want to read something that Mr. Edgerton said that's very interesting. When he was sick and dying, before he had his lung transplant, he made the remark, "Never stop fighting the fight on sludge." He stated he sat on the Los Angeles Sanitation Board for years when sludge was being dumped in the ocean and banned, and knew firsthand the dangers.
Katie, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manier. Just two quick corrections. The city has nothing to do with the new high school. That is the Paris Union High School District building that high school number 4, and that site is actually outside of the city boundaries. And secondarily, Mr. Furman and I, when we both served on the Quail Valley Environmental Coalition, that board, that corporate board asked for the Menifee Union School District to produce student illnesses for a 3-year period, and there were no anomalies, no spikes, no nothing, even in the range when the H1N1 was prevalent. Aside from that little spike from that, there wasn't any anomaly that would suggest that there was an issue. So I just wanted to share that with you. Mr. Edgerton.
Right. One of the doctors that was on that report that you referred to, I called, and he said that he had some children who had inflammation, but nothing life-threatening. If you take a bag of Bandini or any kind of fertilizer and you spread it around and you don't use gloves, you're likely to get a rash from it, which I've done many times, and I got a rash from it many times. But just in reference to the sanitation board, I sat on the sanitation board. That's all of the cities, mostly in LA County, about 100 of them. So number one, I wouldn't have the authority to make a decision like that in the first place. Secondly, because there was an allegation by a friend of yours that might be the case, I had the sanitation district contacted. The CEO, who wasn't there when I was there, he may have been on a junior staff level, and they researched it and stated to the city of Menifee they have never sent anything here. If they have sent anything here, it would have been through the major fertilizer companies like Bandini or whatever. I don't want to denigrate your concern about sludge. I think it's justifiable, but and I'm familiar with those kind of pathogens, and I've had a lot of experience and a lot of background in it. I think you're justified in being concerned. I haven't seen any evidence that would cause me a great deal of concern about what's going on in Menifee. If that evidence were there, then I would join you. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Edgerton. Next speaker, please.
Joyce, okay, Chiari, thank
I have copies of what I'm going to say, if that's okay for council members. I didn't know we had such a big party, but there are ones for council.
And why don't you go ahead and speak and then give the copies when you're done to the city clerk,
Sure.
and then that way we'll be more
Get my
efficient.
glasses on and we'll go.
right.
Okay. Honorable, I'm sorry. You got it. All right. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council of Menifee, California. I'm a resident of Menifee Lake since '91. I applaud our progress, expansions, and dirt-moving projects. Menifee is a beautiful community, mostly. I wonder how many of you shop over at the Menifee Town Shopping Center, you know, Ralph's, AutoZone, Pueblo Viejo, Ross. Look across to the entrance of Mar-a-Lago. It's one of the 7 tracts that comprise 6,000 residences referred to as Menifee Lakes. That entrance is not one of the most beautifully areas. I live there. It's both an eyesore and an unsafe area. 1, I'm asking for prompt action to restore the median on Sunstream. It needs 2 trees replaced and serious sprucing up. Menifee Construction Phase 2 will provide the landscaping and irrigation system in 3 reconstruction medians. The 16th of July contract can't be changed. Designs are in place. The minimal effort would be required to make Mar-a-Lago entrance improvements. 52 trees are bid. The 24-inch tree box size would be comparable tree replacements. I'm recommending that 2 of those 24 box trees be reserved for Mar-a-Lago median. A crepe myrtle would complement other Menifee landscaping. Mar-a-Lago residents welcome a holiday evergreen tree planted and dedicated to our military who are not home for the holidays. Maybe an incorporation of cobble material could be used. Governor Brown asked California residents and businesses to voluntarily reduce water consumption by 20%. We can do that. Let's embrace WaterWise, but stay at that intersection. Secondly, when Peter Warworth addressed you the 16th of October of 12, he suggested that a no U-turn at Antelope and Sunstream to keep accidents from happening would help the lanes on Sunstream. I don't believe he literally meant the sign itself. That sign alters past practices, requires implementation and enforcement. No cross flags ever appeared when the sign was installed, no flashing lights, and rarely is enforcement in place. This notorious intersection exhibits false security. Mar-a-Lago residents now compete with the violation U-turn drivers. Wannabe U-turn drivers enter and sweep around that infamous ugly median, encountering neighbors walking, children playing, or nearly T-boning drivers attempting to simply exit our track. Incidentally, I want to know if Sunstream is a residential street. The city has created an unsafe area for the residents of Mar-a-Lago, so then borrow some of Reagan's words: tear this sign down or enforce the VC. I'm calling upon you to both concerns. Phase 1 is a perfect time to reconfigure Mar-a-Lago landscape entrance. Let's model WaterWise features and reduce city maintenance cost.
Joyce,
And
that's your
secure
time.
intersection. The cost of law enforcement can be offset by capturing the fines of $234. Let's see dirt moving and red lights turning into green dollars.
Thank you, ma'am. If you could hand your statement to the city clerk, we'll have the city engineer take a look at your concerns and see if there's anything that can be done in the future. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Roxanne Thompson.
I know, close to the mic, right?
What's that?
Close to the mic,
Close to the mic.
right? Good evening, everyone. Over the past several years, numerous attempts have been made to have the city address a very serious traffic issue that we have in our area. To date, nothing has been done yet. In the meantime, reckless drivers continue to endanger the children, pedestrians, horses and their riders, and law-abiding drivers in their vehicles. The most problematic streets include, but certainly aren't limited to, Corson, Hawthorne, Byers, Melvin, and Craig. The citizens have had meetings with Mayor Scott Mann, Councilman Furman, and numerous times been in touch with other council persons. They did put a stop sign in, but people don't want to stop. We did have Officer Greg Berry there, and he was quite effective. And then he left, and then now everybody's picked up where they left off, and they're speeding through the place. They just don't stop at the stop signs. That's not important to them. And I would hate to see the city wait until there's like a serious injury or a death before we act. And I would like to see this very large concern addressed by the city. This is public safety, and we can't just put a Band-Aid on it by having an officer sit there. We need to address perhaps speed bumps or some other alternative, and I would ask that somebody please put this item on the agenda so it can be discussed and that we could have our citizens here to represent themselves.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manager, if we could, I know the city engineer's out dealing with another resident. Roxanne, if you'd talk to Mr. Smith right now, he'll get us a report and we'll maybe get it on a future agenda item. Well, we have to do it as a bigger part of the scheme of the overall traffic circulation of the city because there's some other projects that take precedence right now. So why don't you go ahead and talk to the city, Mr. Smith. Deputy Mayor?
I believe that's Councilman Furman's district, and if he chooses to move that at the end of the meeting, I'll be happy to support him.
I'm in agreement. Mr. Johnson, did you have something to say?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I was just going to mention that most times issues like this don't need to rise to the city council. We can do that at the staff level. Jonathan Smith's a phenomenal engineer and public works director, and we'll work together to resolve the issues out there.
Thank you all. Next speaker, please.
Those are all the speakers under your public comment items,
All
sir.
right, thank you very much. On to council member updates and comments. Gentlemen? I have a couple of updates. First of all, I want to say what a fantastic job the city did and Valley-wide Recreation and Park District and the Lake Menifee Women's Club on putting together another fantastic Independence Day event. Well received by all. It just seems to get better every single year. And you know what? It was done without Mr. Johnson being in town. He was on vacation, so good job, good training, good leadership in that regard. And one of the pieces of feedback, I don't know whether you got this, Mr. Johnson, or not from a team member, but there were looking towards the future events there. We need to maybe try to get some Wi-Fi in the park so that people can run their credit cards at our vendor booths instead of just having cash, or maybe work with Valley-wide in a joint use agreement to put an ATM machine at the community rec center so that people can get more cash. That was, 2 people gave that up. Mr. Lennox?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things we will be looking at for next year is ATM booths within the park. Typically, there's a revenue share that can also come from that, so
Excellent.
It'll create more cash
So you got the
on
word.
hand. And we did.
Okay, great, fantastic. Next thing I have to report, I attended, for the second time this year, I attended the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Dallas, Texas, and that was a follow-up meeting to the January conference, because subsequent to the January conference, I had an opportunity to talk with Mayor Kevin Johnson of Sacramento, who we worked together on putting forth a resolution calling on Congress and/or the White House to relax the National Environmental Protection Agency Act that requires the submission of transportation projects that have federal dollars tied to it and having it go through another EIR process when you have a state that already has more stringent requirements in place. And that resolution was unanimously approved at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. It's going to Congress, it's going to the White House. Hopefully they'll give us some regulatory relief on that and save municipalities and public agencies and private corporations in California from the expense of having to pay additional monies to have that EIR report. It'll streamline the process and really save a lot of money in that way. Also, I would like to ask staff, and if Council Member August would second this request, I think we have a golden opportunity here, Mr. Johnson, to reach out to VFW Post 1956. Michael Kano is in the audience from the leadership team there, and if we could get city staff to meet with the VFW Post leadership and engage, now that we fully have taken title over the Case Cenicero Center, engage in a discussion and dialogue with them for a potential joint use agreement for them to use some portion of that facility. They've been having a hard time finding places to meet routinely. They've been a long-standing public service agency in the city for a very long time, way before we were even a city. And we have an opportunity here to share a facility with them. And Mr. August, if I could get your concurrence on that for staff.
I second that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mine too.
Excellent. I think that's probably a unanimous call. Do you need any other direction from us to engage them?
No, sir. We've known of their situation and tried to assist them many times. I think now is a great opportunity for us to move forward.
Marvelous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kano, for your leadership on that. We recognize the need, so talk with us, our team, and see if we can't do something. Okay. All right. On to the consent calendar. Are there any modifications to the consent calendar? We have speakers, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Your Honor, may I, oops, hold on. If no item is pulled, we do not, sorry.
If no item is pulled?
If an item is pulled, we have a speaker.
Okay, well, I would like to pull item 10.6 just for clarification of staff. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion on the balance of that consent calendar.
So moved.
May I have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Furman.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Mayor Mann.
Aye. 10.6 is adopting a resolution number 14-382. Do I need to take a speaker first?
Yes, sir, please. May
On-
we do that?
On which item?
10.6.
Oh, okay, well, very good.
That worked.
Who is it, Mr. Klein? Ah,
Actually, I guess I would be considered the applicant,
yes.
maybe.
Yeah,
So that's it. I don't know if it would maybe be more appropriate after your comments.
it may be. It may be have nothing to do with what I'm about to say.
Okay, well, I put a speaker slip in case there were comments, if I could
I'll tell you
answer.
what, let me share with staff what my thought is, and if you still want to speak, you can come back, all right?
Thank you, sir.
The reason why I pulled this off is because in the staff report, there's no map. There's no boundary map associated with this. And I think as a general thing, we need to make sure that the CFDs have boundary maps of the area that the CFD is going to affect, and I don't see that in this particular staff report. I'm okay with moving it forward. I just wanted to have that discussion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I completely agree. I'll push that back to the city engineer.
Sorry, you were
But
out in the foyer when I
We want to talk
mentioned
about the
that.
boundaries of, in fact, we have the applicant here, and if you'd like the applicant to talk about the boundaries, they are contiguous with the project site.
Would you like to share?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that may have been, I don't know where that, I'm not looking at, it may have been a delay, because of a delay of information getting to staff. I don't know why it didn't get in your staff report, but it did get here, I think Monday I brought it up. So I don't know, you may have already got your staff report, but there is a boundary map in the final draft document that has our applicant's wet signature. Not only is there a boundary map, but there is also written description of both properties. So it is only the CFD, this CFD only covers Commerce Point 1 and Commerce Point 2. There are 3 parcels on Commerce Point 1 and 1 parcel on Commerce Point 2.
All right, thank you very much for that. Mr. Johnson?
I might be mistaken, but there's a boundary map on 10.6, Exhibit C on the backside of page number 9. Might have been,
Good catch.
it might have been produced on the wrong side of the sheet.
Yeah, thanks. All right, thank you for that correction. With that being said, I'll move approval of 10.6.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Furman. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
We have several public hearings tonight, and some may take longer than others. And when we get to 11.4 and 11.5, I'll share a couple comments before we take any action. But for now, we're going to roll into 11.1, adopt resolution number 14-383, approving participation in the statewide community infrastructure program. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, sir. We have a brief staff report. Wendy Welsh, your acting finance director, has that information for you on the SKIP program.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this item is regarding the statewide community infrastructure program. SKIP, as they call it, is a pooled financing program for developers to finance development impact fees and public improvements. It's sponsored by the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties through California Statewide Communities Development Authority. The underlying security and bond provisions are the 1913-15 Assessment Bonds Act. Impact fees can be pre-funded in advance or reimbursed. Public improvements can be financed on an acquisition basis when complete. Any city, county, or special district can join SKIP by simply passing a resolution. Developers can apply to be part of the program online. The program is through statewide community infrastructure. The issuer is California Statewide Communities Development Authority. The purpose is the financing of development impact fees and improvements. This is done through the 1913-15 Act Special Assessment Obligations. There's the financing team listed at the bottom there. This shows different cities, counties, and agencies throughout California that are members already. Eastern Municipal Water District, Corona, Norco, Riverside County, to name the local agencies. There are 3 types of programs through them. Impact fee reimbursement program, which reimburses the property owners for impact fees collected when the building permit is issued. Impact fee pre-funding program provides advance funding of impact fees to the sponsoring local agency. And acquisition funding provides funding of improvements completed by the developer. To be eligible, fees for infrastructure to be owned by public agencies, not including school, housing, fire, and police fees. Some of the eligible improvements you'll see listed there: streets and roadways, sidewalks, parking, parks and parkways, bridges, thoroughfares. Local agency requirements. This is what we are asking to do with the resolution. It is to become a member. And to do that, you have to adopt a resolution consenting to the use of the SKIP program. You have to submit the SKIP applications. When tax-exempt bonds are issued, the district executes a bond closing certificate which confirms that the infrastructure financed through SKIP is a public infrastructure. The property being assessed has valid entitlements, and the funds will not be spent in violation of federal tax law. That's the end of the presentation. If
Mr.
you have
Johnson?
any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I could just kind of cut through some of this. I was a member of the City of Corona, the Department of Water and Power, when City of Corona elected to be a member of SKIP. Basically what this does, it's another economic development tool for development companies and businesses that don't have the full funds to pay for the public improvements that need to be made on the development projects that they have up front. So they go through the SKIP program. The SKIP program pays the city, and it also offers financing for the individual to pay back SKIP for those fees. It doesn't affect the city in our collection of fees or the timing, and it doesn't allow us to get any less fees. It's just another economic development tool for a developer to use when moving through a development project.
Okay. Questions of staff? Mr. August?
Yeah, a question for either city manager or staff. You mentioned special assessments. How would this affect, is that special assessments on the property owner, and if that, are they voluntary, are they mandatory, and what would they be for? If there are any at all.
I'll take that. If it's a special assessment, it would be used to hold as such as in a lien by SKIP, so that when the property owner or the developer pays SKIP back, that would go away. So it's a short-term backup for a financing plan.
Yeah, it's not voluntary though.
It
correct?
is not voluntary. It's only voluntary on the person who actually uses the SKIP program. They can elect to use it or not. This is a service that we're trying to provide to enhance and encourage economic development.
Is it a special payment, or is it collected with their real estate tax?
It is a tax assessment, so it's collected on the property tax bill
Property tax bill.
annually.
And there would be a...
Not affecting the city.
Would there be a length of
There's
time?
different terms based on the amount of money
Application.
needing financed, but that's between the developer and Skip. The city has nothing to do with it. All we do is take a payment from Skip instead of a payment from the developer. That's it.
But Skip would pay you the total amount,
Correct.
and they would be paying Skip back
Correct.
with interest.
It's like using a credit card.
Gotcha, gotcha.
It sounds like it's another tool that we can use. Any other questions before we open the public hearing? All right, at time 7:30, a public hearing is open. Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, Your
Have
Honor.
we received any correspondence on this item?
No, Your Honor.
Do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
Very well, I'll close the public hearing at time 7:31. And council, we're amongst us. Are there any further discussion? Mr. Furman?
Would there be a published interest rate on this type of financing?
I believe Wendy could have those particulars, but I believe they fluctuate depending on, it's a credit card rate. If you're looking at it as a credit card program, there's going to be a rate associated with that. It's going to go up and down based on an interest rate per forma, based on the amount of money that's being needed to finance.
Yeah.
Again, the city doesn't have a part in that. We just accept the fees that are paid to us.
And the landowner would be negotiating the whole deal?
The builder, developer, or owner of the land, whoever's developing the project, yes, it's on
Okay.
their end.
Any other discussion? May I have a motion on agenda item 11.1?
Motion?
May I have a second? Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 11.2, public hearing, adopt resolution number 14-386 to establish fiscal year 2014-15 community service area charges within the city of Menifee. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is our annual assessment that will establish the charges for the CSA for the coming year, and we'll be putting those on the tax roll. It's a tune of about, I believe, $1.4 million in the staff report, and this is our ongoing annual assessment for this various CSAs that we have.
Are there any questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll open up the public hearing at time 7:32. Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have we received any additional correspondence on this item?
No, we have not.
Do we have any public testimony?
No, we do not.
Very well. I'll close the public hearing at time 7:33. Gentlemen, is there any other discussion on this item? This seems to be our annual adoption. Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. And Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 11.3, public hearing, adopt resolution number 14-387, establishing fiscal year 2014-15 landscape and lighting district charges for District 89-1-C of the city of Menifee. Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, same process, different area. These are all the landscape charges for the coming year.
Any questions of staff? Hearing Mr. Furman.
If I remember rightly, the county, these fees were collected by the county. And if I remember, the amount a year before was $851,000. And I had asked the question, do we get an accounting of where that money is spent? And I don't think we do. I don't think they keep track of it at all. So in this system, if we're taking it over, are we going to have an accounting procedure that knows how much we're spending on?
Yes, and
This
thank
landscape
you
and
for
lighting,
that
is it gonna-
question. If you look at the exhibit at the end of the packet on 11.3, you'll see Volume 1 and Volume 2. You'll see the various zones that are in those areas. You'll see the 2013-14 levy. You'll see the number of parcels, the number of acres, and then you'll see the corresponding 2014-2015 levy. So we've done what you've asked before. We've taken over this and taken over the assessments of it, and I believe in December we'll be receiving the bulk of the work for this as well from the county.
The bulk of my question was, is there a reporting procedure that logs the expense on the landscaping and the lighting into the district, or
Yes.
is it a lump sum?
No, if you look at the, it's actually very detailed and very specialized, this right here. If you look at that, we could actually assign that to a map, and we can show you that map. And what you see on the expenses, we're not allowed to charge more than what it's actually taken to do the work.
Ms. Welch?
They are restricted revenues, and they will be held in a separate fund. And so we can report those revenues and expenses to you at any time based on that fund.
Hey, did I hear somewhere, is there a total right now on this?
Yes, there's two separate totals. There's $952,555.87 for Volume 1, which is Zones 3 through 176. And there is another $13,003.34 on Volume 2, Zones 1 through 106.
The total would be then, is that over a million?
If I could do that in my head, Wendy probably could. It's 965 around there.
165,000.
Okay. All right, very good.
Okay, very good. Any additional questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll open up the public hearing at time 7:36. Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, sir.
Did we receive any correspondence on it?
No, sir.
Do we have any public testimony?
No, sir.
Public hearing closed at time 7:37. Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
So moved.
May I have a
And-
second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman.
And yes, after 3 years, I'm glad we got this money under our wing, finally.
And Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the next two agenda items, both of those are being recommended to be continued to another meeting in the future by staff. We're not going to take a staff report on these tonight. These are hearings that are already opened. They were continued once. We're going to see if we have a motion to continue them again. And with that in mind, because we're doing that, we're not going to take any public testimony on these two items tonight. So with that being said, do I have a motion on 11.4 to continue it to a date certain?
Would the certain date be the 16th?
The 16th, or perhaps even Wednesday, July 30th. We have 5 Wednesdays in July, and we have a rather robust July 16 agenda with already, Mr. Manager, 6 public hearings currently scheduled. So perhaps it would be wise of us to take advantage of the 5th Wednesday in July and make that a special meeting and have a couple of these public hearings heard then, would be my recommendation.
All right.
Is that your motion, to continue that item to July 30th at a special hearing, a special meeting?
Well, one of the two is fine with me.
One of the two, okay?
Yeah.
Do we need better than one of the two?
If you'd like to continue it to a date certain, I need that date certain.
Okay. What if we don't want to
And-
continue it to a date certain? If we don't continue it to July 30th, it has to go back on the agenda to July 16th, and we have to continue it again, yeah?
That's right. And you need to say you're leaving this meeting open
Understand?
for public comment and for your hearing, and it will be continued at a meeting on July 30th, if that is your desire.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, may I have a second on that motion?
Okay.
We have a second by Mr. August. Roll call vote. Do we need a roll call vote on that, or is just unanimous consent to continue?
You need a voice vote is
Okay,
all, yeah.
voice vote. Hearing no, is there any objection? Hearing none, this public hearing remains open and is continued to a date certain, July 30th, 2014. Same thing for agenda item 11.5. May I have a motion to continue that to a date certain,
So move.
to July 30th as well?
Same verbiage.
Very well. May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by the deputy mayor. Are there any objections to that? Hearing none. 11.5 is continued to a date certain, July 30th, 2014. On to agenda item 11.6. Mr. Johnson, we have a staff report for this, I believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is going to be a little bit lengthy. I wanted to bring everybody up to speed on the town center specific plan, first of all, and then secondly, the item before you is amendment number 1 to that development agreement. The site is located at the southwest corner of Newport Road and Hahn Road. This is an aerial view. The site consists of approximately 149 gross acres. Development totals nearly 560,000 square feet of retail, office, and hotel uses, and it incorporates a series of residential villages that would accommodate up to 1,052 residential units. The original development agreement was recommended for adoption by the Planning Commission on December 4th, 2010. As some of you recall who were on the dais, there was a conducted public hearing, which was eventually led us to April of 2011, culminating the introduction of the ordinance and the development agreement, which we currently have. The second reading of that ordinance was on June 13, 2011. The time in between was because we were hiring a new city manager, and we wanted that city manager to come online and review the project before it was approved. Including the development agreement was a dedication of 6 acres of property to the city for the future City Hall site. To date, the focus of the specific plan has been to identify and capture commercial retail users of various types to enhance the city's overall appeal to sales tax revenue, generating entities with an eye to the future of the Civic Center of Menifee. The town center has had several successes. This here's the Santa Rosa Academy. Most of the project site and the road improvements surrounding it were done by the master developer, who is the Regent Group. And I'll use Regent and Stark LLC, Stark Menifee LLC, kind of interchangeably. I know them as the Regent Group, but they've installed the great oak tree in the middle of the project site. They've installed the Menifee Town Center signage that we went to a couple weeks ago for the unveiling. And it now sits at Town Center Drive, which was Sherman. They've completed La Piedra Road west of Hahn to the north of Santa Rosa Academy, along with the new street, curb and gutter, sidewalk, lighting, landscaping. They've also completed Sherman Road, connecting through from La Piedra to Newport, through the center of the development, installing traffic signal on Newport, and of course renaming Sherman Road to Town Center Drive. They've secured a letter of intent with Krikorian Premier Movie Theaters, which is a 12-screen movie theater with the in-seat service, to include a bowling alley of 16 lanes and a sports bar along Newport Road that fronts the project site. You get that interesting multicolored chart graphic there. North or New Point is up on your screen. They've also secured a letter of intent with a major medical office builder, and that's also along Newport Road that fronts the project site, and that's just west of the Paloma Wash. The Paloma Wash, for you that are looking, is on the far right, between the pink, interesting square with a triangle and the purplish blob on the left side, and it runs north to south along the project site. No, those are very technical terms. I apologize, Mr. Engineer. They've also completed a land acquisition deal with Rich Development with a retail commercial site located east of the Paloma Wash at the northwest corner of Newport and Hahn. And those, we feel very comfortable sharing what that site would include. Again, that's the upper right-hand corner of the project site, and it's in that pink square with a triangle. Aldi Specialty Market, PetSmart, Sonic, Jimmy John's, Party City, Chili's, El Pollo Loco, The Habit, Kirkland Home, Buffalo Wild Wings, and there's a few others on the way that they do not have actually listed on their website. That's why I feel comfortable sharing with everyone, the world, what they're bringing to City of Menifee. This is the conceptual monument layout for the site. You can see at the town center it's going to be monument heaven with multiple areas of displaying Menifee Town Center and the logo that they've created.
Can I interrupt and just ask, can you go back to just a quick question while it's on my mind and while we're here. Does this, I know the old development agreement and the new amended one, does that include the completion of La Piedra Road from Sherman westward to Bradley, is my question.
No, I don't believe it does. Not all the way to Bradley.
Okay, thank you.
Amendment 1 to the Town Center Specific Plan Development Agreement was requested by me, actually, to amend the existing development agreement between the City of Menifee and Stark Menifee Land, LLC, or Regent Group. And first, it must be noted that the master developer, Regent, did not ask for this amendment, and they've complied with all the existing requirements of the current development agreement. We've had a very good working relationship with Regent, and we're continuing to partner with the developer on new commercial and retail opportunities as they arise on site. The proposed amended agreement before council tonight was initiated, again, I guess we've got that twice, by myself. I just want to make that really clear. They didn't come to us. They didn't actually want the amendment of the agreement, and I saw an opportunity that I'll share with you as we move through the presentation, that the fields in the Paloma Wash, I think, are not a good idea, and we've got solid engineering to back that up. We've got professional experience of our engineering group, and we have some agreements that we've received from Riverside County Flood Control, which really paint us into a corner financially and on a risk management side of things. So after reviewing these things with the city engineer and myself, I actually got a copy of the Riverside County Flood Control Agreement sent to the city in April of 2013 when our former community development director was here, and I hadn't seen that report until about 4 months ago when Mr. Smith reviewed it and was concerned about it and shared it with me. As we got to talking about what the fields in the wash would mean, not only to the community, because we know that was looked on with high favor for the development itself. We saw some serious issues. I actually went to Regent, who started calling and asking where their flood control agreement was so that they could start the fields in the wash, and asked them to hold off for a while, and we moved into a discussion about how we could amend the current development agreement, which I think gives the city a better opportunity and gets the city more amenities than putting fields in the wash, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. So after several discussions, we determined the best interest of the city, the fields should not be built in the wash. I contacted Regent and we began discussions. The main concern is the current and future financial risk to the city by allowing the installation of the fields in the wash. Again, the developer's already spent money to engineer the fields. Our city engineer has reviewed that not favorably. We have some serious concerns with those. And however, Regent is acting in good faith under the current development agreement toward installation, but we have asked them to hold off until we can resolve what issues we believe we have and hopefully remove them. In looking at the large playing field that we have, the city has various needs to address, and since this project fronts Newport Road, in my opinion, a better idea would be to spend money on improving Newport Road between Hahn and Bradley, because the developer is conditioned to put an additional lane on Newport, that we could make Newport on the west side look like Newport on the east side. I think that's important to our economic viability and our developments and along Newport itself. Additionally, the city is to receive a central park at Town Center. In the current development agreement, it's a passive park. What we've negotiated with the developer is that to have a true central park in this Regent Town Center, which will become, we hope, the civic center of our city, I thought it was very important that amenities should be added to create a sense of place and drive community members to a location for certain activities. I asked of them, and they acquiesced to building an outdoor amphitheater for concerts, plays, movies, and special events, adding a water place, splash pad, a tot lot, restroom facilities, and I think those are a must for that central park.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, sir.
The splash pad concept, is that similar to the splash park in downtown Paris and then over in the Cottonwood Canyon Sports
Yes.
Park? Those are,
Yes.
that's what you're talking about?
That's a splash pad, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
After review of the proposed fields in the wash, we identified several key issues. Once the fields are installed, if they're installed, all ongoing issues in the flood control channel will be the fiscal responsibility of the city. That's in perpetuity. That's not for a week, a year, next year, it's forever. And those include maintenance, repair, reconstruction due to weather events, trash, debris, weed abatement, mowing, maintenance of the waterway, of the channel, and other safety hazards. General fund money would be needed for ongoing support of the fields on an annual basis, as there's no community facilities district for the installation of these fields. The replacement of the fields would be in the neighborhood of about $1.4 million if an issue occurred. That is the cost that Regent would be spending to actually develop the fields in the wash itself. There's parking and accessibility issues. Installation of the fields does not take into account the parking, the traffic, the emergency services access, restrooms, or equipment placed in the wash. And once the project is built out, if the project's built, if the fields are built and the project site, the entire project site is built out and City Hall is built, then there would be future City Hall parking access would be a possibility to get there. The risk is that there's an agreement with Riverside County Flood Control, and it places all the risk on the city in perpetuity. That's a flood control channel, and we would be assuming the risk and responsibilities of the flood control channel, and because our fields are in the flood control channel, so we'd be assuming all of the risk associated with the actual channel itself. The field proposal did not include any review by the State and Regional Water Quality Control Board. What that means is we have to run this by them first before they can be built anyway. So even though engineering has been done on it by the developer, I'm not sure exactly how they thought they would install them in there in the first place when there's some permits that need to happen. And Jonathan will be able to answer some questions after I complete the presentation here. Finally, the fields won't be regulation in size. They won't be able to host games or tournaments. It's practice space, and I fully understand the need for practice fields, and the city is lacking in that area, but I don't believe it justifies the cost associated with the installation. This is a project overview site again on your left, and on your right, this is the Paloma Wash overview. Jonathan, I'm going to kick it to you on this slide. Would you please describe, and in fact, I'm going to go to the next slide because what you see in light green on the left side project site overview photo is the black and white on the right. But I'm going to go to this slide here because this shows the Paloma Wash details showing a minimal rain event in 2010 that would have wiped out all the fields. Where the water is located in the middle of that picture is where the fields would actually be built. This was a very minimal rain event in 2010. If the fields were built prior to that, after this rain event came in, we'd have significant issues to rebuild. I'm going to throw it to Jonathan in a minute. He's going to talk about the flow of the channel and what all those squiggly lines mean because they're engineering a little bit above my head. But for fiscal year 2014-15, if the fields were installed now, for the remainder of the year, the city would actually pay an additional cost of about $56,000, maybe $57,000 for the total maximum daily load permit requirements for Canyon Lake. It could pose additional pollutants of concern that may impact Canyon Lake if there's trash, debris down in there, and that goes down into Salt Creek and then into Canyon Lake. And then there's an annual maintenance cost of about $50,000. So if these were installed for $1.4 million, we'd have an annual cost roughly now of about nearly $110,000. Jonathan, if you go over some particulars about how the flow is in the wash, what this channel is. When I first looked at it, I thought there was going to be a barrier from the channel sides to the actual fields, and that barrier would actually allow the water to flow without going across the fields. And Jonathan, if you could explain to us how that actually is not the case.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yes, as the City Manager mentioned, going back to the regional board, they were never brought into the loop on this discussion. The Public Works Department's water quality consultant made contact with the regional board today, had a lengthy discussion, and I just want to let everybody know that the regional board is adamant that they would not issue us a 401 permit, that they would in fact defer to Department of Fish, Game and Wildlife for a 404. Which, again, they were adamant that they would recommend to the Corps that a permit not be granted for this use. So I can answer any questions that you may have regarding that. But back to the fields here. The plan on the left shows the alignment of the 13 fields there. If you look closely along the west side of the channel, we're looking north here, you'll see diagonal lines that are coming from the east there. Those are pipes that are stubbed out to the channel that ultimately, when the development is complete, when the town center project is complete, thank you, those areas right there, these pipes will be fully active. And the event that occurred in 2010, that is water, much more water was able to percolate into the soil that is undeveloped right now. The area that is undeveloped, water was able to percolate into that soil. Now, when that area is built out, there's going to be even more runoff, and this will occur more frequently. So there is a current design that puts in a low flow channel that's located on the opposite side, if we can use that cursor to point to the gray shaded area that is on the east side of the channel right there, correct, right along there. And that low flow channel is basically a 16-foot wide ditch that is designed to pick up the water that's coming in from pipes on the east side there. If you could use that cursor and point to those diagonal lines coming in. So that water will be picked up. Going back to the pipes on the other side, that water will be allowed to cross the channel, across the fields, make its way in to the low flow channel, which will constantly be a maintenance issue for taking care of the ruts and so forth that would develop just from what we call nuisance water in between when we have rain events. Nuisance water being when this area is developed, there's going to be irrigation, there's going to be constant runoff, there's going to be drainage crossing the fields. So that, in essence, is how the system is designed to work. And we have done further analysis of the potential amount of runoff and the occurrence, and we have determined that this event could happen on an average of 5 to 10 times a year, depending upon if it's an El Nino, it may even be more. So that led me to recommend to the city manager that these fields would not be viable and that it would be a constant maintenance issue for the city, let alone an attractive nuisance to the public.
Thank you, Jonathan. So 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I approached Regent with the idea of taking the fields out of the wash and have Jonathan continue to working on why I don't believe they would actually work or be a beneficial necessity for the city. And little did I know all of this information would come out in this way. If I get my cursor back, I'd like to go through the rest of the presentation and we'll take as many questions as we can at the end. By removing the obligation of Regent to install the fields in the Paloma Wash and turn them over to the city, I negotiated the following: that the developer would prepare, let's go back to my grandiose idea that Newport on the west side of town from Hahn to Bradley should look like Newport on the east side of town from Antelope to Menifee. We just did that project. It was a $3.1 million project. We put the city's own money into it. We got it back from WRCOG, and we put that money now toward the Scott Road interchange. The idea would be the same here on this side. And I got to thinking, well, if they don't spend the money for the soccer fields in the wash, why can't they just give us that money for the Newport Road improvements? And at first they weren't really happy about that, but I think they started seeing the benefit to their own project. If they have a brand new street, a brand new Newport in front of their brand new development, it's going to drive people to it. It's going to make more sense. It's going to be more economic stimulating, and it's going to be more pleasant for our community to drive through our town. So they've agreed to prepare the Town Center Newport Road Improvement Plan at a cost not to exceed about $143,000. They would also be obligated to do these things in that plan, which is the street improvements, the medians, the street lights, the signage, the striping, on and on and on. They would also, these things would be excluded because we would be the developers or the installers on or the contractor, so to speak, on the actual project itself. The drainage study and storm drain plans, we already have that for Newport. Water quality management plan, we have our city engineer. Traffic control plan, we have a traffic engineer. And the construction supporting, including but not limited, board bid support, surveys, all that can be handled by our Public Works Department. Then I thought and took a look at the Central Park, and the Central Park was going to be a passive park. And the idea is wonderful. You have 13 fields in the wash, you've got a Central Park, you've got some commercial, some retail, and then some residential around it, but there really wasn't anything to drive everybody to the site. And as we started talking about the site and what the park would look like and what types of things people talked about from the beginning of the cityhood, there was an amphitheater, water play, splash area, restrooms, parking, and tot lot play equipment came up, and you saw the design back on a couple of other pages. So they agreed to add those things into that 5-acre Central Park and deliver that park prior to the development that's coming in later. In fact, if they can get us in the development agreement, I believe it says by September of this year, they need to submit plans, and if we are on our feet and get those back to them, they could technically start construction of that public park and that amenity by October 1st of this year. So we would then agree that that central park satisfies their public park obligation for the first 631 residential units, which was their obligation initially with the fields. So basically, we've taken the fields out. We've given them a public park. They've given us a public park that's actually an amenity for the residents, and then we've agreed that for that park, the 631 residential units would be cured by that park. Now, for residential units of over 631 and up to their baseline of 1,052, they asked to go back to the public park ratio of 3 acres per 1,000, which is what the park acreage per 1,000 was at the time the original agreement was entered into by the city. They technically have the right to ask that and to go back to that, and I acquiesced. They also asked, and one of the reasons I acquiesced is this is a different type of development. It's not a full residential development. It's more civic center, city-themed in nature. There's a mixed use of development around the site, and although we'd love to have more parks, if you look at that 5 acres and what's in that 5 acres and how it will be adjacent to City Hall in the future, the ability to have the City Hall site with the adjacent Central Park theme, it's very prevalent around town. If you look at Temecula, how they're laid out, if you look at Marietta, how that town center is laid out, it would be very similar. We also, which is not in the presentation, got out of them the temporary sports fields, which on the 6 acres that the city currently has at the Regent Town Center, they are to construct, and I think it's cost them about $300,000, temporary soccer fields on the City Hall site, and those will be used until City Hall is able to be developed at some point in the future. The developer wanted this in here. The next part, this was another acquiesce to them, is that if and when they sell the residential component of the development, that residential developer could pay an in-lieu fee for the additional park space. I agreed to that, but only with prior approval from the city manager or the community development director, because I don't want to accept the money. I want them to build a park instead, additional parkland. So they agreed to that. This is the Central Park Master Plan. It was dated April 18, 2014. They submitted this. We had a little bit of a staff presentation from them to us. There's some concerns with how the amphitheater is laid out, but if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's the amphitheater with what we call like a band shell and the grass area out to the back. If you go up just north of that, you'll see the splash pad. If you go to the left of that or to the west of that in the north, you'll see the tot lot, and then there's the parking and additional picnic areas. So back again, the Central Park only clears the developer for certificates of occupancy to 631 residential units. The master developer, Regent, intends to sell the residential component to a home builder that would then make application to the city by submitting plans and specifications of lot sizes, planting areas, park space, etc. After the staff review and negotiation of additional park spaces, which is what we would want, it would then go to Planning Commission for discussion and approval, and it would come to the City Council for consideration and approval. So those are 2 other bites at the apple that the city would get on the additional residential units above 631 for additional park space at the Regent Town Center. So there's some other language things that need to be cleaned up in the development agreement, since it is quite a bit old. There's a reference in here to county lighting and landscape districts and certain conditions, and those need to all go away because there is now a community facilities district for the Regent Town Center site, which does not include the flood control channel. And so we're changing the language for that. The city would accept the public improvements. They were really adamant about this condition, and it's like, well, why wouldn't we accept it? They're building streets, street lighting, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and paying for it and building it, and then we assume ownership of it, and then we maintain it in perpetuity. So for some reason they wanted that in there. That's what happens anyway, so I said sure. The developer will also deposit $250,000 into account with the city's finance department for the pedestrian bridge. The pedestrian bridge is a little innocuous in the development agreement currently. It says a pedestrian bridge, and that pedestrian bridge would connect the rich development site, which, Julie, if you could go up to the far right, that rich development site would then connect to the green area on the left side, across the channel, was the idea. However, the development agreement does not state who should pay for that. So that was a concern to me. So I asked them, asked Jonathan what he thought a decent pedestrian bridge might cost. We came up with $250,000. They'd agreed to it. And as soon as we create a CIP for the bridge, they will write a check for $250,000. They will also pay their fair share of roughly $868,000. As soon as we create a capital improvement program for the Newport road improvements from Hahn to Bradley. And this is some other language that needs to be cleaned up. We're taking out the phasing of the park because they're going to deliver that up front in one fell swoop. We're going to remove the sports fields from the Paloma Wash. It removes the I-215 Newport Road Interchange CFD language because that CFD is being unwound by the county because the Newport I-215 interchange is fully funded. And then there's some other language about working with WRCOG to permit the use of TUMP fees to be spent locally on the project. So to recap the amended changes, I hope you're all still with me. Sorry about this, it's very long. Remove the fields in the Paloma Wash. The city would receive an upgraded 5-acre park with amphitheater, water splash pad, restrooms, and tot lot. The city would receive completed plans for Newport Road improvements totaling $143,000. The city would receive $868,000 for Newport Road construction. The city would receive $250,000 for the pedestrian bridge. Regent would receive full park credit for the first 631 certificates of occupancy for Central Park. They would receive an allocation of 3 acres per 1,000 residents for additional park space after the 631 units, and be eligible to pay an in lieu fee if it was prior or prearranged with either the city manager or the community development director. And then remove the language regarding the I-215 Newport Road CFD because it no longer exists. So the recommendation from staff is to adopt the resolution number 14177, recommend the city council approve the amendment to the Town Center Specific Plan Development Agreement, and it was approved by the Planning Commission in May, I believe it was. It was a vote of 4-1. There was a concern over the park acreage space moving from 5 acres per 1,000 to 3 acres per 1,000 with the removal of the sports fields in the wash. That concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions or if there are any public speakers.
Wow, that's a thorough report, and it absolutely did. Your report and seeing it visually on the PowerPoint was a lot better than me trying to sift through it on the staff report. So, wow. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Denver?
Jonathan, did you get a professional opinion on the cost of that bridge? It seems low.
I did get a professional opinion based on other bridges that have been built in the area and the current cost for constructing similar bridges.
And that's how much?
That was the number we came up with, correct.
Mr. Furman?
Jonathan, did you get the dimensions, with dimensions on the soccer fields at all?
It's in the cross section here. There's 75 by 105.
So those are small ones. Those aren't even regulation size soccer fields. Those are for the little people. That size is for the under 10-year-old age.
Yeah.
But it's not, not for tournaments, not for, I mean, I don't think it's even, Robert Lennox, former professional soccer player, by the way, would probably have information on that, on field sizes and spacing, but they are not to standard.
If I might, this is more of an editorial comment then. You know about Brown Field up in Riverside, that soccer complex? That's what we need in Menifee. Yeah. That's exactly what we need in Menifee. And we need to hold those tournaments here. We need to bring people here, hotels. I mean, look at what Wheatfield does when they bring in their AAU softball team. Those girl AAU players, I mean, that's a big, huge event. And Menifee could be like that Brownfield soccer complex when we have the regulation size. Because when they're the regulation size, you can break them down smaller and stripe them and let the little kids play. But anyway, I know it's a matter of, but we do have We do have that 20 acres that the city owns next to the Paloma Valley High School. Be a great place for a soccer complex. That'd be my idea. But that's not on the agenda. Do we have any additional questions of this from staff? Mr. Furman?
This is, would be a question for Mr. Lennox. The use of the small fields like that, is there a heavy use for 10 and under?
Not typically. Those are usually seasonal use only for recreational. Once you get the U10s and U8s, the ones that do year-round play typically are in larger fields anyways. Those are club users, travel ball type. Similar to what the mayor is mentioning, you'd need a larger facility with regulation size where you can rotate those even modified field sizes because of the frequency of that use. You can't even use the same goal mouse over and over again due to wear and tear. So the cost that was mentioned by the city manager earlier, certainly in my opinion is conservative because of the wear on the same area over and over again. You can't rotate fields in this situation. So,
any other questions? Very well. I'm going to open the public hearing at time 8:10. Madam Clerk, was this properly noticed?
Yes, sir.
Have we received any correspondence on the item?
No, sir.
Do we have any public testimony?
No, sir.
Really?
Then, Mr. August?
I would like to thank the staff for a very thorough report, as the mayor has. And let's see, what am I going to say? Anyway, I think the staff saw a problem as far as a year ago with soccer fields being built on or within the Paloma Wash. Considerations for health and safety, engineering, environmental, recurring cost and maintenance, long-term feasibility, practicality, and just good common sense does require the city staff and council to reevaluate the inclusion of soccer fields in the town center specific plan. So I want to thank you for doing that, Mr. Johnson and Jonathan. As well-intentioned as the previous council was in wanting soccer fields to be included in the town center specific plan, I think a longer view is now needed for the reasons Rob has cited in the staff report. I remember sitting in the audience when soccer fields enthusiastically became one of the main tenets hoped for in a resolution for final approval. There was definitely community support for what Mr. Edgerton, Fred Twyman, and Tom Furman and the rest of the council wanted negotiated into the development agreement, and that was for soccer fields. Looking now at what was a grand plan, I'm reminded that discretion is the better part of valor. It's better to be safe than sorry, or that it's better to put a fence at the edge of the cliff rather than an ambulance in the valley. In lieu of the staff's information, I'm having second thoughts about the wisdom of forcing the soccer fields into the specific plan within the constructive confines and highly environmental and sensitive areas that they're in the specific plan. Should region properties in the previous council perhaps have anticipated environmental and infrastructure problems? Probably. But hindsight's always 20/20. But now, what is now is therefore, and I am recommending, I'm just recommending approval of the staff's recommendations and accepting the agreed upon conditions negotiated by Robin Region Properties. However, before I commit to vote, I would ask the council to allow a workshop next week to give the public an opportunity to come before the council to express their opinions on the recommended removal of the soccer fields from the specific plan. The council, at least this council member, has had 3 days to digest and embrace the meaning of this amendment. So I will be asking the council in a motion later on, before deciding on this amendment, to vote for the workshop, if for no other reason to let the public maybe perhaps vent some frustration or maybe offer support for this amendment. I think in the interest of a positive and healthy perception, openness, and transparency, we can put our decision off for another week, even though at this time I support the staff's recommendation to support this amendment. And again, thanks to the staff. And I would be willing to vote on the project at the time of the workshop. And that's all I have to say, Mayor.
The public hearing is still open, and we don't have any speakers on this one tonight.
That is correct.
I'm going to go ahead and, are there any other comments that the council members wish to make before I close the hearing and we can discuss it amongst ourselves?
Oh, we can discuss this among ourselves.
Because if we if we consider Mr. August's idea, we can reopen and continue it to a date certain if that's the pleasure of the council. So we've done that before. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing at time 8:14, and now we are inside the rail, and it's a discussion amongst the council. What do you want to do with this development agreement amendment?
First of all, I want to compliment staff on what I thought was an excellent presentation. Secondly, I want to compliment Rob specifically for running this down and doing a yeoman's job of negotiating with Region Properties. Obviously, if you have what ostensibly is a soccer field, but isn't a soccer field of the size of a soccer field, that doesn't have lights, that doesn't have parking, that doesn't have ingress egress, and floods out sometimes several times a year, it's impractical. Why that wasn't an issue originally, I don't know. At the time, I was the mayor, and this is where the majority of the council wanted to go. So I made an ad hoc committee, which consisted of Fred Twyman and Tom Furman. I do know that the soccer field was accepted as in lieu of the density on the residential area, except I suspect the residential area is not the subject tonight. And so that would have been disappointing. I think Tom would know more about that, but he and Fred negotiated on several occasions with the owners of that property. And I know that some people wanted the soccer field. A lot of people wanted less density in the residential area. Fred was very high on that. That's what he wanted. But he was excited about the soccer field, so he would take that in lieu of the density. So that's a disappointment. However, I am very pleased with the way the Region Property is proceeding with the commercial. And I'm not sure what another meeting would do. I think sometimes when you chew and chew and chew on an issue, you end up generating opposition, and maybe you're better just to get on with it. I don't know, but I'm very pleased with what's happened so far. I'm disappointed in the high density and no soccer field, but nothing's perfect. It was a job well done. Thank you, Rob.
Mr. Denver?
I agree with the discussion that this was simply not information not made available to us about the quantity of flooding and the size of the field. Just none of this was made apparent to us. I also do not think that we ought necessarily, although I'm not desperately against it, having another meeting. I see no point in it. This seems to be, at this point, now that we have the information, a no-brainer. I don't know why we want to keep postponing things. We already have 3 meetings this month. This would be a 4th. I think that costs us in staff time and a whole bunch of other issues. So I would like to see us have a vote on it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Denver. Mr. Furman?
Actually, since part of this was Fred Twyman's idea and mine, I think that Regents grabbed this opportunity to satisfy their commitments for recreation, to basically use someone else's property to install the increased recreation and not have to put it on their own property like Wally said. Instead, they were able to get more use out of their land with more density. And I'm also not happy with everybody thinks the spruce goose won't fly. I mean, I haven't read any reports, and nobody else has read any reports. We're depending on, like most people depend on staff, but I'd like to see some reports. Also, since we are going to have the meeting on the 30th, this could be a small item that would just be added anyhow. It wouldn't take more than a few minutes to postpone the vote till then. And my concern is the 1.4 million that Regency won't have to spend basically on soccer fields. I'd like to see that 1.4 million spent on soccer fields, all right, and get the money for the highway in another way. So I think these things could be kicked around for 2 weeks, and we can make a decision at the 30th meeting. That's
A clarification about that. Is it not true that what you've managed to renegotiate here was instead of that 1.4 million being spent on soccer field, it would now go to the repaving of Newport Road from Bradley to Hahn?
That's correct.
So in that regard, it's not like we're giving that money up completely. We're getting we would be getting a rather large improvement in infrastructure as a result of that. And so my thoughts on this, I want to share with the council that I did, I contact, and city manager, I probably should have shared this with you, but I did contact PARSAC today, the Public Agency Risk Sharing Authority, who holds the city's property and liability, and the Deputy Executive Director, Ken Ong, shared with me that as the previous council was debating this and deciding on whether to do it, that they did recommend not to put the soccer fields in the wash basin, but that they would accept it if the city wanted to assume that risk. And so Mr. Ong reiterated to me today that it is PARSAC's preference to not put those soccer fields in that wash, and I just wanted to share that with the council. And so my inclination is to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission. I don't know, I was contemplating maybe giving this another week or two, but I'm in agreement with some of the comments. I don't think it's necessary. Mr. Denver?
When this was decided some time ago, the court wasn't involved at all, had never been thought of. Having a court, which I'm in favor of having near this area, and having soccer fields that close to it with kids is something we haven't really talked about. And I think soccer fields are great, but when you talk about the 20-acre piece next to Ploma Valley High School, which is some distance away, maybe there's a better place to put the soccer fields than right up next to a courthouse. Anyway, I still, if with permission of the mayor, I'd call for the question.
Okay, we don't have the motion yet. Mr. Furman?
a couple comments on the recent comments there. I had also discussed in a suggestion with staff on Monday that maybe we could put a reduced number, maybe one, maybe two, near the crosswalk area at the bridge as a test case. Regency is willing to put them in, and if we find out that they wash out, they lose 2 fields, and we just don't do them, we don't repair them, we turn it back into the wash. Also, another location in the city, if these funds that they're going to spend on the soccer fields could be used to put the soccer fields in another location, like the mayor said, over at their 20 acres. And a place that I've always thought of that was really neat and has an amphitheater look already is that big cavern by Bradley and Holland. I mean, that's a huge retention basin, and in the 21 years I've been here, I've never seen more than a low flow trickle around the outside border, and I think that would be nice to investigate that area too. I know you've seen it, Scott. It looks like a perfect amphitheater. You could have bleachers on the whole way around that bank. So these are some of the thoughts that I would like to investigate.
That's a good idea about that wash basin, that we do that in other development projects, like Heritage Lake has a couple. And Mr. Johnson, you had your light on there a minute ago. Did you want to retract whatever you were going to say? Okay. At this, I want to say though, to Mr. Furman, and if Fred were still with us, I think you guys did a really good job and creative job of coming up with that idea. And I think that at the end of the day, while it may be a good idea to maybe put a 2 in the test as a test site, I'm just unwilling to cast a vote to accept that risk for the city. So with that being said, Mr. Johnson, you do have your light on now.
I remembered what it was. Sorry.
So it's not me that has the only one that has that problem.
Mr. Furman and Mr. Twyman do need to be commended. They did work the temporary sports fields into the development agreement, and those temporary sports fields will stay in the agreement, and they will be on the 6-acre site that City Hall will eventually someday be built on when the financial ability of the city is able to do that. So that 6-acre site with those temporary sports fields, which is under development now, could be there for quite a while.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Johnson.
And I believe those are full fields, full soccer fields.
Mr. Denver.
Can I make a motion
At
this point?
If we are done discussing, I'd entertain a motion of any type.
Motion to approve 11.6 and approve agreement, development agreement with Town Center.
Mr. August?
Yeah, and I'd like to make a substitute motion not to approve, but to continue the public hearing until next Wednesday for a vote on the amendment at that time.
We have a substitute motion. Is there a second on the substitute motion?
I'll second.
We have a second on the substitute motion, and that is to continue it to what date?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, July 9th. So the motion by Mr. August and second by Mr. August is to continue this item to a date certain, Wednesday, July 9th at 6 p.m. I meant Mr. Furman. Sorry. Roll call vote on that motion, please.
Councilmember Furman.
Aye.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver. No. Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
No.
Mayor Mann.
No.
Back to the original motion. I would, however, need a second.
We have a motion by Mr. Denver to approve the development amendment tonight. Is there a second? Second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember August.
Not tonight, no.
Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman.
No.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Excellent, healthy debate, gentlemen. On to agenda item 12.1. We have animal control agreements. How many speakers do we have on these items? And I'm asking for biological reasons.
Yeah, take it away.
And you asked me to speak after that. Yes, sir. We have about 14 or 15 speakers. You would exceed, if everyone took their time, you certainly would exceed your half hour.
We're going to stand recessed until 8:40.
Sorry it happened that way, and I didn't have an opportunity to show you the information that I was able to put together. So I ran it down after the discussion.
warn her.
The other part.
That's no problem. We'll get it.
Call the Menifee regular meeting back to order at time 8:40. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do here with this next agenda item is our decorum policy allows us to get a little creative on how we take public comments, specifically on this item. So I want to set this up a little bit because right now we have 15 of you who have put in speaker slips. And 15 times 3 minutes is 45 minutes worth of public testimony. Trust me when I say that every single one of us up here, we've been inundated with email, letters, Facebook posts, and I'm going to ask the city clerk to share how many of those that we've received. We have the essence of your arguments and the customer service issues, licensing, sheltering, youth, and I mean, we have a really good handle on those issues. And so what we're going to do tonight is we have two decisions to make. The first one is a contract for sheltering, okay? The second item is a contract for animal control services, whether to go with the county or whether to go stay with AFV. Those are the issues. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take public comment from any of you on the sheltering piece first. And when you come to save time, when you come to the speaker, well, excuse me, when you come to the podium, if you would just simply state, I am in favor of X, Y, or Z, I think that we can get your thoughts that way without taking another 45 minutes. If you're amenable to that, I've conferred with a couple of my colleagues, that's what we're going to do. With that being said, Madam Clerk, could you share with us the correspondence that we've received and then call the first speaker for somebody who wants us to talk about sheltering?
Yes, sir. First of all, there were 6 emails that came specifically to the city manager. Those emails were broken up as follows. 5 of them were absolutely, no question about it, in favor of your remaining with Animal Friends of the Valleys, and many had comments as to why. One of those was some comments about an experience they had that was... Oh, just on the
I'm sorry, if I
sheltering.
could redirect just for a moment. I apologize. I'm not an attorney, but redirect, that's kind of funny. We're
Cross-examination.
talking about the sheltering side,
Talking
which
about
is
the sheltering.
which is 12.1A, and I believe all the emails that I received
Yes.
were on the services animal control side, not the sheltering
All
side.
emails and all
Just wanted-
calls were B. Sorry,
just
you're
wanted to confirm
absolutely
that.
right.
Okay.
I thought you wanted to report on that.
So-
I've had no information on A, period.
Yeah, nor have I in terms of Facebook or, because, the council had already made that decision when, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but we already made that decision a couple months ago when Ramona put us on notice that they had no desire to renew the contract. So, with that being said, do we have any speakers to talk about the sheltering operation first?
The only person that indicated they might want to talk about sheltering was, they want to talk about both, was Michelle Black. Yes. Do you want to talk about the sheltering contract or Part B, the animal control services?
Can you clarify the difference, I think?
Yes, the sheltering contract is where the animals are housed and collected by their owners. After they're picked up, the animal control services portion of it is when they're collected and service calls that come to the actual homes, or if a lost dog's found, or the licensing portion of it. So that's the two separate ones.
Clear as mud, right?
Well, and we don't have a decision to make on sheltering, Your Honor, if I'm correct. There are no two options. The only sheltering we have available to us that I'm aware of is the animal control through county.
So
For the sheltering piece, the staff recommendation is to renew the current contract with the county for sheltering.
got it. Do you want to make a brief staff report on that, or are we ready to?
That was it.
Okay. With that being said, I would entertain a motion to approve the agreement for animal sheltering services with the County of Riverside for fiscal year 2014 through 17. With the county. This is sheltering with the county. Deputy Mayor motion for approval.
Second.
Mr. August seconded. We have a roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton, Councilmember Denver. Councilmember Furman.
Councilmember Furman. You're being called upon to vote, sir.
On Part A for the sheltering service for the contract for the county to continue. No, sir. Would you like me to? All righty. Councilmember Denver voted yes, and Deputy Mayor Edgerton voted yes, and now you're the third call I've made. Councilmember August, Mayor Mann?
Aye.
Thank you.
On to 12.B. So with that, we're going to, if we could have those in favor of animal control services being serviced by the county, come up and give us your, that's what you'd like to see first, and then we'll take those in favor of Animal Friends of the Valley, and that's how we'll do it, and in order to save a little bit of time. So.
Did you
go
want
ahead
the
and call.
summary first?
Yeah, give us a summary again.
Received 19 calls as of this afternoon. All calls were in favor of Animal Friends of the Valley remaining our service provider. There were 6 emails sent to the city manager specifically. Those emails broke down as follows. 5 of them were in favor of Animal Friends of the Valley's remaining the servicer. And the 6th one was a general statement of some issues one person ran into with an animal and trying to locate it, and didn't really say they weren't in favor, but seemed to lean toward not being in favor of Animal Friends. Otherwise, every call and every email.
Okay, I've got that 24 in favor, 1 opposed to AFE. So, call the first speaker, please. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would, for the sake of time, give it to us straight and tell us whether you are in favor or not.
Michelle Blackwell Chavez.
Hello. I'm not in favor
Of AFV or the county?
of AFE.
Okay.
We have lived in here in Menifee since 2005. We moved here because of the great rural area, nice, quiet, open, not much traffic, but close to shopping, about 10 to 15 minutes from Temecula, Marietta, and Lake Elsinore. Of course, that has changed. I would strongly encourage the board to consider Riverside County AC as Menifee's AC for the new contract time period based on some very important reasons. Riverside County has a great new shelter that I actually toured in San Jacinto with great care by its AC officers. Riverside AC also has protocol that can be questioned and taken to a board. They have rules and regs, trained staff, and officials. I have problems with Riverside on a couple of different issues, particularly the MSN of pit bulls, but we have worked through that. But they have a protocol for regulations. They answer to the county board. You can appeal. They have somebody to answer to. This is not true for Animal Friends of the Valley. They are a nonprofit that has a contract with cities to provide AC services to that area. I've sat through many meetings and found out so much information that normal residents wouldn't know. AF the Valley has a board that makes decisions which no city sits on. They make their own rules and regulations. Cities can ask questions but are not guaranteed answers. Cities cannot make them change current regulations or operating procedures for the shelter. Currently, the shelter has no set rules, no protocols that are followed on euthanization of animals that are there. I've heard through many sources that the director just walks through the kennels and picks who will die today, not checking mandatory days on Hayden law. The animals they will not provide documentation lists of intakes versus euthanization dates. Rescues can pull dogs on many occasions, have asked to pull the dog or if it's close to youth day, and have walked out only to find the next day the animal was killed the same day. I've been there a couple times, seen there's room, so why are we killing animals? Well, they get paid by the city based on youth numbers, for one. Animal Friends of the Valley also hates pit bulls and anything like them. The shelter has strict rules, and they are the first to be killed because the board hates them. Many rescues have asked to start programs for pit bulls, but have been sidetracked by the board. The rules on pit bulls are not adoptable, period. I asked that we turn all services over to Riverside because at least we can get answers, and since our dogs are not are taken there anyways, it only makes sense.
That's your time.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be asking a clarifying question later on, but the information that was just talked about the Joint Power Authority, which is the Animal Friends of the Valley, which member cities belong to, there's representation by each city on that board of directors. I'm pretty certain that that's how it works, just like every other joint power authority in the state of California. So I don't think that one was quite accurate in terms of that one bit. Next speaker, please. And again, ladies and gentlemen, try to just give it to us straight and quick.
Chris Krager.
Okay, I will be short. I am not here representing the Air Force. I just was stopped in on my way down. Thanks for the information.
Thank you for your service, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm an animal lover, been so my whole life. We've been here in Menifee for 9 years, I think, since 2004. We've adopted 2 pets from Animal Friends of the Valley. I've lived all over the world. I've traveled all over this great nation. I've never seen a facility as nice and as well cared for as Animal Friends of the Valley. I'm serious. I'm not a paid endorser or anything. I've worked with them. I've walked in there. We've adopted 2 amazing pets from there. And it's not only that, we're talking about the services as well, and that's what I want to get to, is I drive up 215 every day, up to the base. I've probably called in about 8 to 12 different stray animals. And I've got them on my speed dial. Obviously, I do that hands-free when I do that. But many times I have called. It's usually after hours. I get home late at night. I was here flying the other night over this wonderful city. And I call it in, my wife calls it in, and they always respond very quickly. I always get to somebody, I'm not leaving a message. If I do leave a message, they get back to me within 20 minutes, and I know the animal's probably still there. So I'm just speaking from personal experience about this great company. I hope you keep the contract.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, just real quickly, I know you're emotional and passionate. It's okay, but this is a business meeting, and we have a decorum policy that says you can't clap. Okay, so I would ask you to allow us to enforce that, and we'll get through this together. Next speaker, please.
Leah McGee.
I just wanted to, I would love to keep Friends of the Valley. I've been on both ends. When I lived in Quail Valley, we had county, and we went over to Friends of the Valley. And the response time for Friends of the Valley is incredibly much faster. The humane part of it is incredibly much better. They are, they're very good. They're very informative. Not only do they come, now I've moved to Sun City, and you all know we have problems with skunks.
That's
And-
in Mr. August's district.
But I'm telling you, the Friends of the Valley came there and I learned so much. And they were so humane to even a skunk, which I would not have been. I mean, that's what pistols were created for, so. But anyway, but anyway, I mean, being with county and being with Friends of the Valley, it's obvious that we need to stay with Friends of the Valley.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Marlene Pertel.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll be really short. I had a list, but I'll just try and cut it down. Well, first and most important factor in your decision for Menifee and for your animal control services is the cost. And the bids are in, and county comes in about $75,000 over a 3-year period cheaper. And I know that's a big consideration for any city. And then the other point that I'll just make real quick too is that if you have animal control with county, that provides a continuity between the pickup of an animal and where the animal is sheltered. And by the time the animals get to county, the officers already have valuable information regarding this animal, such as its behavior or temperament or injuries. And so that can move right into the facility that it's now in, and that information can be relayed to them. And I think they have a great licensing program, and you know all about it, so I won't drag that out. But in closing, I just wanted to say that I know Menifee has a long and friendly, well-established relationship with AFV, and I can see that they have really a lot of supporters. But in the end, the decision, although difficult, has to be what is in the best interest of the animals, and not about our friends, but about the animals. And the continuity of having the same organization collecting and transporting animals as where the animals will eventually be sheltered is what's best for the animals. So this should not be about which facility will benefit monetarily the most, but again, for the council to make that tough decision of what is honest as you can be with the facts and not the feelings as to what is best for the animals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. I'm assuming that you were in favor of the county offering?
I'm in favor
Okay,
of the
thank you.
county, yes, thank you.
Gail Roller.
I'll be brief. I'm in favor of AFB because of the location. It's very close. And it's a very personable building, surroundings. And when I've called for an animal pickup, the response time has been good. I would quibble about the paperwork that you have to do sometimes at AFB. Seems to be not very streamlined, but I would urge you to keep AFB.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Laura Clow.
Is that Laura or Lori?
It looks like L-U-R-A. Oh, very good, thank you.
I'll make it very brief. I live here, have lived for 14 years. Animal Friends of the Valley is absolutely fantastic. My daughter will be speaking to you, but we've got our third pit bull from them, and Lily is a sweetheart. She's absolutely spoiled little girl. And all I can say is, when you go in there, they are so kind. They care for those animals just like you'd care for your own at home. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Lorianne Clow.
Well, just like my mom just said, Animal Friends, I've got on my third little pit, and they are wonderful. I have had to call them for some strays in the neighborhood. They were there, they were compassionate, they were caring, they were kind. Unlike the county of Riverside, who just 3 weeks ago was called to take care of a horse that was skin and bones. Her hooves were overgrown so badly she couldn't walk. It took them 2 weeks and hundreds of calls from around the country after the picture was put on Facebook. This is not the first time they've been like this. They do not return calls. They don't show up. It's whatever they want to do. Please keep Animal Friends of the Valleys. They really do care.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Tiffany Hines.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Contracting with a private animal control and impound operation may seem like a good idea. In fact, I have dealt with many private facilities in the past, and it's not necessarily the case. Private facilities hide behind their status as private. There is no control over the way private organizations operate, as you may know from your previous dealings with Ramona Humane Society. In my opinion, it would be better to contract with Riverside County Department of Animal Services, who are transparent, competent, better equipped to handle the job at hand, progressive in their operations with compassionate management and staff, and a very active volunteer corps. If you've ever visited a private facility, you'll find most are not role models or properly trained for progressive sheltering or animal control. Private does not impose or even imply standard of care. In my opinion, they're nothing more than private contract killers with less transparency. If you were to make a request for public records through a private facility, you most likely will be told they do not have to provide any records because they're private and not subject to Public Records Act. I ask, is this the type of business you want to contract with? Transparency and accountability are absolutely essential for a well-run animal control and impound operation. Outsourcing to private contractors will do nothing to promote that.
Thank you. And again, just to be clear, a California Joint Power Authority, which Animal Friends of the Valley is a public entity. It is a governmental entity, and it is subject to the Brown Act, and they are required to disclose if there's a public records request. So I just had to share that with you. Next speaker.
Sherry Moore.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and citizens of Menifee. I'm a resident of the city of Menifee. I've been here for about 15 years now. I'm also on the board of a local animal rescue group, the Menifee Valley Humane Society. I am in favor of contracting with Riverside County Animal Services for our control, not Animal Friends of the Valley. I like to base my opinions on verifiable facts, not sentiment or who's friends with who. First, let's look at financial savings. If we look at the proposals that have been broken down by the city itself, we can see that over a 3-year period, going with the county will save us over $76,000, which we know we need for other important city projects. Additionally, administrative services provided by Animal Friends of the Valleys, such as complaint resolution, meeting attendance, and hearing officers, are not included in their contract proposals. These services are charged by AFE at a rate of an additional $60 per hour. This is in Exhibit A that they provided. The county's proposal includes all administrative fees built in. That includes attorney's fees, hearing costs, meetings, etc. There are no nickel and diming the city for additional services. The county's proposal also includes medical care for injured animals that are picked up in our city, which can be very important to us. If you look at Exhibit A of AFV's proposal, it states that they will provide emergency veterinary services as needed, not to exceed $60 per animal, according to current contracts with local vets. That's in their statement. It's very disturbing to know that the value of our pets' lives is limited to $60 with Animal Friends. It's in Exhibit A. You can read it for yourself. It's also very confusing for our residents to have AFE pick up our animals and then try to locate them in a timely manner. We, the Menifee Valley Humane Society, often receive calls and emails to assist in finding lost pets. People simply don't understand why their pets cannot be located in the AFE system if AFE pick them up. It is clearly an advantage to have Riverside as our animal control. Our pets will be transported directly to the shelter. There will be no confusion about where an impounded pet is, and it will be less stressful for our pets and our residents. There's been at least 2 incidents in the past 3 weeks where animals picked up could not be located by their owners at Animal Friends. I think you received an email this morning from one of those ladies. So ultimately, if we want to save money, avoid confusion, and streamline our animal control, I strongly suggest we contract with the county and not Animal Friends. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker.
Lorene Simonetti.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm in favor of county. I have just a couple things here of why. I'll shorten it up. In emergency situations such as wildfire, earthquake, anything that would put our pets at risk, county is prepared to deal with those issues. Second, they employ more than 30 animal control officers and veterinary professionals. And they also have the public safety enterprise communication radios, which communicates with other agencies like the sheriff and fire directly. So in case of an emergency, that's available. Third, a lot of Menifee residents have livestock, and county's prepared to deal with that. Horses, your livestock, in emergency, they could evacuate. And then one other thing is that Quail Valley still has a really bad stray animal problem, and that hasn't been addressed by our current field services. And I think that needs to be addressed as well. And I think county, they have the licensing program to deal with that, to see what's in Quail Valley. And then on another point, I'm also with the Rescue Menifee Valley Humane Society. And from the rescue standpoint, county's been really easy to work with. We pay no pull fees. We can pull any animal we want. With the other agency, I've gotten the runaround 3 different times, one resulting in a disabled cat getting euthanized that a rescue was en route to get, that they had decided to adopt out to the public, could not use its rear legs, was returned to the shelter in horrible condition and had to be euthanized. That animal should have never been adopted to the public. So as far as the rescue community, Riverside is considered rescue friendly. We can go in there and say we want to pull this dog, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're not going to hold it for public adoption. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Ricardo Ben, thank you.
Evening, gentlemen,
Evening.
ladies. I'm with Boys for Vets. I'm the founder. I'm a combat wounded Marine. I'm actually retired now, and I actually service combat wounded warriors all across the board. I am for county taking over. The reason for that is Mr. Mayor, the public records I've requested from them have never showed up. The bylaws they have, they're non-existent, and they actually have just the board members that are there at Animal Friends of the Valley. That is actually a true statement, because I actually requested them through the tax board. Another thing, so the IRS has also told me that those bylaws haven't been updated since they've actually opened, and they've been, well, actually established. And on top of that, you know, going with county, yes, it's a lot less cost. Also, it will actually, you know, promote jobs, and as well quality control officers. It'll actually give the canines and felines actual better timing to actually get adopted out rather than just put down euthanized. And I've actually worked with county already on a couple of different issues, MSN issues, and I've actually seen them a little bit more easier to work with than getting a runaround with Animal Friends of the Valley. We've actually tried to pull recently and had the biggest runaround I've ever had in my life. And, you know, thank goodness the animal was still able to be taken out. I will say that I've actually had my trainers go undercover and walk in through their facilities. They were not allowed to look at specific breeds, which, you know, that was discrimination towards a breed, pit bull breed and bully breed. I know a lot of people sit here and have their own opinions, but I specifically go for those breeds because those are the ones that actually go through my program and become service animals for our combat wounded. And I hope your decision is made, you know, amongst a joint, and not just because a lot of people want to go for this or that or favoritism. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, sir. Thank you very much for your service and your sacrifice. Next speaker, please.
Judy Kahn.
Good evening. I'm in favor of Animal Friends of the Valley, mainly because I've had some difficulty with the county animal services. I moved here from Riverside after 30 years in Riverside to Menifee 8 months ago. And last week I received a citation from Animal Services in Riverside for $250 stating that my dog is not licensed and hasn't got its shots and isn't neutered, et cetera, et cetera. When I moved here, I intentionally and specifically sent them a letter saying, hey, I moved and my dog's been taken care of by Animal Friends of the Valley. The problem with this citation is that you cannot talk to them. that you have to put it in writing, and you, oh, by the way, have to send them the $250, or they won't even entertain an appeal. That's pretty outrageous. Secondly, they say, call us or email us. I phoned and got a tape recording, and that, I'm used to this. I lived in Riverside. It's rare you can get a human being. And so I get a tape recording. They say, we'll call you back. Give us your name and number. That was 6 days ago. No call. Email us. I emailed them. That was 6 days ago. No email. In addition, the letter, the citation that they sent me is dated June 9th. They mailed it on June 24th. And I do not believe this is a postal error, because that's not uncommon with a county service. This mail weaves through I don't know what. But the problem with that is I missed 2 deadlines. There was a June 18th and a June 19th deadline that triggered negative financial consequences for me. So I don't believe they can handle another thing on their plate. This has been inefficient. It's caused me a lot of stress. There's no way I'm sending them $250 and hope that it doesn't go into a black hole, and maybe my appeal won't be addressed. But the point is, it's not efficient. You can't get a human being to talk to. Animal Friends of the Valley has been incredibly easy to deal with. I don't volunteer for them. I don't work for them. So I'm speaking as a citizen that is affected by licensing and everything else, and I'm speaking for many others who couldn't come with me tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Katie Manier.
I'm going to speak in favor of Animal Friends of the Valley as well. I also lived in Riverside for many years, and I have not been to the new facility, but I know the old facility. You'd go in there and it was not clean and well kept. And if you go to Animal Friends of the Valley, it is spotless all the time. There's no odor. The dogs are housed individually, a lot of them, some of them two in a little kennel area. It's all glassed in. You can see them, see how they interact with the other dogs. I think it's a perfect place. And a lot of our citizens down here are older, so if their dog is lost and it's at the county, they maybe wouldn't even be able to get it. So I think that's a concern. I think it should be kept locally and close.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Alan, help me, D-R-U-S-Y-S, Dries? I'm sorry? Oh, okay, Robert Miller.
Instead of.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City Manager. Robert Miller, Director of Animal Services for Riverside County. I'm in favor of the City of Menifee, and I know I'm here representing the County of Riverside, but I'm in favor of this council making good decisions for its residents. So that's the position I'm taking on this issue. First, I want to thank you guys, thank all of you for your confidence in the county's ability to provide sheltering services to the city and their residents. Interesting enough, I heard a number of people speaking tonight about shelters and conditions of shelters, and it leads me to wonder whether or not they're talking about Ramona Humane Society or the County of Riverside, because I don't believe that our facility is filthy and the animals are poorly cared for. So I'd like to make that point. Tonight, really, this council's faced with 2 options. And on one hand, we have Animal Friends of the Valley, who's fighting to keep a contract that they've held for 4 years. And on the other hand, we have the County of Riverside that are fighting to regain a service area that we lost 4 years ago. I think this council will probably be pleased in either direction. I do believe that the county is cheaper. This city will save, right off the top, $75,000 over a 3-year agreement, and I think they will also save further money through some of the add-on costs within their proposal. I also believe that the County of Riverside is better prepared to handle events of magnitude. Whether it's a large case, whether or not it's a natural disaster, I think the county has more resources to bring to bear on the issues. I also think that the county officers are better trained, more resources are at their fingertips, and the city residents would definitely benefit from services from the county. But ultimately, this is a decision that this council will have to make, and I just want this council to know that I support your decision one way or the other. The county is your shelter provider, and we'll make this work for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next speaker.
Can I say something, Mr. Miller?
Of course.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You know, I just wanted to thank you for those comments, and you have met with Mr. Edgar and myself several times, and you've talked with me a couple of times over the past few months, and I want to tell you, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and I am very impressed with your shelter out there, and I do know the difference between a county shelter and Ramona, so I want to thank you for the sheltering services you are providing the city at this time.
Great. Thank you, Councilman.
Since you called him back, I'm going to ask a question, a clarification. Sorry, I should have asked this when you were still there before. You're the second person tonight that's mentioned disaster service type issues. And are you in a mutual aid sort of situation for disasters? I mean, when you see the wildfires in San Diego, 2004, 2007, and when all the sheltering operations kick in for human beings and for animals, it's not just one person. So can you speak to that at all? Do you have a specific plan for disaster prep?
Yeah, I mean, the Department of Animal Services has both a department operations response plan, but we also have a business continuity plan with the County of Riverside. How are we going to bring business back online for the residents? I hold a seat in the Emergency Operations Center for the County of Riverside. The department has a DOC, a Department Operations Center. We also participate with public health and environmental health in what we call a multi-departmental operations center. Our chief veterinarian is also the county veterinarian. So when we're talking about disease and pestilence, our county veterinarian is one of the people that will be working directly with the county health officer to make long-term decisions about what to do for people and animals. One of the things that most people don't want to talk about in a natural disaster is the amount of dead animals that could potentially be around, and how do we dispose of those dead animals? So our county veterinarian has these conversations up front with the health officer. He's involved in the sentry birds that look for avian flu and other types of disease that we deal with. And the county we've done a lot of long-term planning in the department. I mean, we have things like water tenders, because most facilities, most shelter operations, they don't think about water is the most essential thing that we do, from watering the pets to cleaning the cages. And if your water's disrupted, what are you going to do? So we put a lot of forethought into our disaster planning, and regardless of what the city does tonight, there's still an opportunity to work with the county. And I'd like to point out, too, that AFV, as a part of the Joint Powers Authority, when the county EOC activates, they are underneath the umbrella of the county EOC, and their resources will become my resources. And ultimately, the CEO's resources of the county, the fire chief, the sheriff, highway patrol, all these things go into a unilateral approach at managing disasters.
Yep, thank you very much for filling us all in on that. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, was that everybody's involved, not just one entity. Next speaker, please.
Now, Alan Drusis. Did I get close on that one?
Yep. Yes,
you did. Alan Drusis, Dr. Alan Drusis, Chief Veterinarian for the county and the county veterinarian. I just love to be able to correct my boss, Mr. Miller. He said something that was factually actually incorrect. He said the county was cheaper. The county is not cheaper. It's less expensive, but I can't seem to get him to embrace that terminology. That said, Rob asked me tonight to prepare a couple bullet points on the integrated canine licensing program, so if I may hand this to the city clerk to hand out to you.
Just be mindful of our time, sir, sure. And yours as a public commenter.
The County Department of Animal Services has developed this dog licensing program, and it consists of highly trained and skilled staff in customer relations, in licensing governance, applied geographical information systems technology, and a specific, get out of my pocket, smartphone application that is available at the customer interface. This process utilizes every feature of our Chameleon software system. That's the software that operates the entire shelter from dispatch to medical records. And is coupled with the use of administrative citations, a web-based payment platform, for licensing and automated rabies vaccination certificate registration recognition. The license inspectors, when they're in the field, educate the residents, the dog owners, cat owners as well. They may issue citations and or offer compliance solutions to their problems or their issues relating to low-cost vaccination and department spay-neuter services. We aggressively, as a department, aggressively pursue grant funding, and in fact, many of the solutions that we provide to the residents, to the dog owners, are through these grants and involve free spay-neuter. We've been giving my clinic and our clinic in San Jacinto has been offering free spay-neuter services for an entire year. And your residents under this program would certainly be able to avail themselves of that service. The rabies certs are collected from area veterinarians and downloaded more or less automatically into the database. Reminders for licensing are mailed automatically to the dog owners. If these owners fail to comply, they may be
Alan,
issued.
that's your time.
They may be issued admin cites, and they can use the platform on our website, www.rcdas.org, and license from their home.
Thank you, sir. I think Mr. August has a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, Dr. Juicy, it's good to see you again. Mr. Edguth and myself, we've met with you on several occasions, and if you remember, in our conversations, we were we wanted you to work well with our rescue groups here in the city of Menifee, and I can tell you, and you can hear from some of the comments tonight, that we're very happy that you are working with those rescue groups, and they're very satisfied with what you're doing with them, so I do appreciate that.
We do work hand in hand with the rescue groups. As a matter of fact, as a department, we rescue out almost as many dogs as we adopt out. So this is an integral part of our operation, and we look forward, in any case, to working with these groups in the future.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Next speaker, please.
Susie Allen.
Hi, guys. I do a lot of rescue on the lake, and people call me all the time saying that Animal Friends won't pick up in Menifee. Now, if that's a contract, they should pick up. Now, we had an issue Saturday night with a dog, and he was a very tame collie or German Shepherd, but they wouldn't come, so the guard had to lie and say he was vicious and he was going to bite. Then they picked him up. And the dog was very loving. We found the owner on the lake a day later after she found him after 3 locations were moved. So that's all I want to know. I want to know if that's it, they should pick it up or not pick it up if they got a contract. Because people call me all the time.
Are you in, which are you in favor?
And if you like, oh, I don't care. I just want whoever
Okay.
to pick up and not say they don't service Menifee, because then the people get very, very upset.
And you said, and you clarified that Menifee Lakes, you live in the Menifee
Yeah,
Lakes
Patrol
area?
Masters had to call them Saturday night.
Okay, I just
That's
want to
the
make
night
sure
of
that
fireworks.
you weren't talking about Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake,
No,
or
no.
Lake Paris, or
No,
it's
because
Menifee
on
Lake.
our newsletter it says to call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Lorraine Bagwell.
I wasn't going to say anything other than I was for the shelter to keep their contract, but.
Lorraine, can you get near the speaker for us? Lorraine?
Oh dear, yes.
There you go.
Anyhow, I heard so many different things come out at these different people that told different things. It's hard to go against what I think and they think, but I have had trouble with the county. I tried for over 3 weeks one time to get a dog picked up, and there was 3 dogs inside the house, never going out of the house. The people that owned them were there once a week. And I had a little deputy girl, maybe 20 years old. She went in and looked at them, didn't ask whether they had licenses or anything. She couldn't do anything. So that was one thing. And I know for my own help that the women that live in Sun City and Menifee, we are helped by the shelter because they take care of us with our dogs as well as taking care of everybody in the around here.
So you're in favor of the Animal Friends of the Valley, I hear? Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
That completes your speaker.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this issue, weigh in on this issue, and give us their thoughts real quick? Okay, you first, be brief, since you didn't. Oh, well then you can't speak again. I'm sorry. You already spoke too. Is there anybody else that hasn't spoken? Did you not, did you speak, ma'am, in the blue sweater? You're the what?
She's the U-turn girl.
Oh, different. Oh, please come up. You're first. We have to have you record your voice on the microphone. Sorry.
I'm like Susie. I'm full of questions, no answers. I would like to find out if both facilities would actually deliver the animals, because I do know that Animal Friends of the Valley will actually bring you your dog if it has been found and you have no resources to procure your dog. They will come and they will deliver your dog back to you to your home. I don't know if county does that or if that is a possible feature. That's all.
Thank you.
Questions.
Next speaker, ma'am. And then over here on next to the window. Please state your name for the record and tell us whether you're in favor of which facility.
Louise Ashley, I am in favor of, really I'm not going to be saying I'm in favor of either one, but I lived in Riverside one time, and I lived over there by the river bed of Santa Ana River. I used to call county constantly to come and get these wild animals that were going throughout the field, and they were also advertising mine. Very rarely would they come and say, we'll get them when we can. I don't think that's an excuse with wild animals running around all over the riverbeds. Grant you they needed water and whatever they need, but the county just prolonged coming constantly, and we had children young at the time, and they were always in danger of these animals who turned into be vicious dogs, like pit bulls or whatever they are. There were a lot of those also. I do not know much about the Animal Friends because I have no animals at this time, but I don't think I would send anything over to Riverside because also they don't have, their answering services are very poor. I have called that for pickups here in Menifee, and I've been given the runaround.
Thank you, ma'am. And ma'am, over there by that window, please approach the mic, state your name, and
Shirley McConaughey, and Animal Friends of the Valley saved my dog. I had to have surgery, and in 24 hours, they had the money guaranteed to my vet for me. Riverside County doesn't even answer the phone in 24 hours. And I lived in Riverside for 23 years, and their public relations are poor. Too bad. So that's it. They might have a nice pound, but their public relations are very bad.
okay, thank you. Ms. Bagwell?
Oh, God, don't bash anybody.
Hi, I would just like to say I'm in favor of Animal Friends of the Valleys.
State who you are, please.
Willa Bagwell, Executive Director for Animal Friends of the Valleys.
Thank you.
During the 2008 wildfires, it was Animal Friends of the Valleys that set up the evacuation site in Temecula. And for the city of Murrieta, we were actually out there for 9 days taking care of 270 animals at one location and 140 some in the Murrieta location. We were on site 24 hours a day. We were at night rescuing the horses. Animal Friends stepped up and helped both cities during those fires.
Were you activated by the county's EOC or through
Yes.
another mechanism?
Through the city of Temecula. Grant Yates is the one that called me in the afternoon, said, get ready, we need you down here.
So it was Temecula's EOC that activated you, not the county EOC?
Right.
Okay.
But we actually set up, brought in fencing, I brought in groomers because people were pulling up with their cars, cats were in the trunks, flying out. We set up an actual animal shelter in a park at the evacuation site so people could come down during the night, handle their animals, and they were right on the location with them. So we are set up for evacuations as well. Our officers are highly skilled. They go through the same PC 832 training. They are certified for euthanasia. They are trained in arrest and firearms. They do their own arrest. So both agencies, the officers have the same skills.
Mr. Denver?
I had a dog come to my house. I called Animal Friends of the Valley. Very quickly they came, picked it up, very friendly. Young lady was involved. However, your system of the numbers you assign that dog is not the same numbers as the Ramona Animal Shelter had at that time. Therefore, I'm assuming at the county doesn't have the same numbers as you do too. And I could never, it was very difficult to figure out whether that dog was at that point Ramona, because you guys, your numbers aren't the same. I really would like to suggest to you, if you were to happen to get this contract, that you fix that problem.
Okay. That's something that we need to work with the county on. The two agencies need to work together on that.
Well, do you understand how big of a deal? I was
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions of the executive director? Mr. August?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank everybody
Well,
for their...
hang on.
Oh, okay.
So just give it back to me for a second.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
it, going once, going twice. Any more speakers?
Oh,
Yes.
One more.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to make sure. I don't want to
I'll
be
make it
accused
quick.
of not allowing people to speak tonight.
I'll make it quick. I am Monique Middleton. I'm the Animal Control Supervisor for Animal Friends of the Valley. And again, Riverside County come up here and let you know that, they have a system for disaster. We have the same system in place. We have, with all the cities that we deal with, we are called and we're set. We do have an evacuation center set up also with everything that we need to put in a trailer to get it to where it needs to go. Again, as you know, this is one egg. All animal services is one egg. We have to separate the white from the yolk. Okay, the yolk is animal control. The white is the sheltering. You can see there's a mixture and they all get concluded together in here tonight. We're talking about animal control services right now. As Willa said, these animal control services are both trained the same. We require the same certificates to be in the field as Riverside County. PC 832, arrests, search, seizure, firearms, my officers are all certified. We're also certified in euthanasia. One thing that we have on our trucks that county doesn't have on their truck is animal tranquilizer. If you're in the field and you have a hit by car, the law says that if it's going to cause that animal more pain to move it, to take it to a vet, to have it euthanized, then we're supposed to euthanize it on the spot, humanely. We carry tranquilizers so we can tranquilize the animal prior to euthanasia. That's the difference between us. That's the only difference between us. Their officers are qualified just like our officers. My officers are in the field. Right now, I don't have officers here because they're attending the city of Menifee right now, and that's why they're not here. So again, I had something big to say, but I'll keep it really short. But again, we're talking about a contract. We do services for your city now, and we'd like to keep your contract.
Thank you. All right. With that being said, Mr. August.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all the people for coming tonight and participate in helping us make our decisions on what field service operator we're going to choose tonight. I want to thank the mayor for allowing me to be on the ad hoc committee. It gave me a wonderful opportunity to visit with some of the people out in the community, like AFE and the county. So I feel I have a better understanding of it. And no matter what decision or what recommendation I make tonight, based on what we've seen tonight, I'm going to be disliked by 50% of the people here tonight. So first, I'd like to thank Rob Miller from the county and his staff. Mr. Drusi was here tonight, and for the wonderful PowerPoint presentation they provided to Mr. Edgerton and myself a while back. And also Willa Bagwell from AFE and her staff, and Rob Johnson, the city manager, Terry Willoughby, and Gina Gonzalez for giving Mr. Edgerton and I the time and opportunity and information needed for us, Mr. Edgerton and I on the ad hoc committee to make what we think is an informed recommendation to the City Council tonight. I would also like to thank the public, as I've already done, for their participation in the process. The issue is by far, the most responded to of all issues since I've been on the City Council. Regrettably, not all the conversation has been polite and nice, and there's been misinformation being passed back and forth. After our decision tonight, we're all going to have to pull together for the sake of our animal community and direct our dedication, passions, and deep emotions into one voice, the single commitment of no kill. The first point I'd like to make is that whatever is decided tonight, Menifee's Animal Services will continue to be far less ideal and not close to what we at the city would like to provide and feel the residents of Menifee deserve. The deficiency caused by the location of our sheltering facility cannot be overcome in the near future, so we have to make the best of it now. I can tell you the mayor and deputy mayor, as members of the finance committee, have created a reserve fund for the purpose of getting our own animal shelter in the future. We should be able to get that sometime in the next 200 years, the way it's going right now. Now, for my recommendation to the council tonight. I've spent several hours over the past month telephoning cities now under contract with the county for field services, hearing no glaring deficiencies, with all being quite complimentary, especially in their very proactive licensing programs that do help reduce the overall cost of service. Also, as our newly contracted shelter provider, they are receiving positive feedback from the community. That being said, my recommendation is the city keep AFE for our field services operator for the present time. It's my opinion that if we were to leave AFE at this time, the confusion which already exists would be greatly exacerbated, resulting in even more confusion, leading to a possible inhumane condition for our animals. Menifee animals, if we did go with the county tonight, will still be turned into AFE. And if by necessity AFE have to refuse to take them in, my feeling is that many of these animals would not make it to San Jacinto Shelter, 30 miles away, but be left on our streets. The only Menifee animals turned into AFE now are those turned in to the night trap or walked in or carried in by residents or owners. Menifee animals picked up on our streets do not go to the AFE shelter but are transported to the county at 3 p.m. daily. It's not great for the animals, but those are the facts, and that's been misrepresented by some people. Cost-wise, I would say, if you consider several grant programs offered by AFE, the Senior Low-Income Animal Injury Assistance, to mention a few, along with the financial assistance for spa and neutering, the cost differential between the two agencies is really not that much difference. I think the licensing fee program provided by AFE over the last 4 years has been underrepresented to some degree. I think AFE will agree with all of us working together. We have to improve on that if we decide to stay with AFE tonight, and I've talked to Willa, and she agrees with that. I am convinced that AFE has acted and shown a willingness to go beyond the contractual obligations when needed. Although it would be more practical and efficient to have a single operator, as some people have mentioned tonight, for both sheltering and field services, I see no reason or fault to take the contract away from AFE at this time. Our animal services need improving, and it will take a coordinated effort after tonight by the city, the county, AFE, rescue groups, and all residents in the city of Menifee, if we are to do it, all working together for one goal: no kills in our city.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. August. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I think that regardless of the decision, it's really between two good decisions. I have worked with Animal Friends of the Valley a little bit, and all of my relationships with Animal Friends of the Valley has been very good. I find them a very warm and concerned group of people who do their job, and so if that's the decision of the council, then I'm satisfied with that. I also agree that the best position is for us to have our own shelter. But you're forced to come down in reference to a decision. I was just going to go along with the group. Mr. August has asked me if he thought that I felt that there were points on the other side, if I would please make them. So I will make them. I think, first of all, in reference to the shelter, why we chose the shelter, in a conversation, because Mr. August and I were on the same ad hoc committee, in a conversation with Willa Bagwell, his question to her was if they took the contract from the city and had that added responsibility, was it conceivable that the euthanasia would go up? That is, more dogs would be put down. And Willa Bagwell, who's the executive director, said, yes, that's a possibility, because she said, we're talking about space. That is not what we would want to do, but we have a limited amount of space, and if some dogs come in and we don't have the space, then we either don't accept the dogs or we'll have to euthanize them. She maintained that was the same of every organization, and I believe she's correct. But the county, we toured that facility, the new one, and it is state of the art. It is an enormous facility. Not only is it clean, but they have many, many people on staff. As a taxpayer, I may not be pleased with all the money they spend, but as an animal lover, I'm pleased to know that they have that capacity and that they have that space. We're talking here, though, not about the shelter, but we're talking about picking animals up. I believe that Animal Friends of the Valley have done a good job of that. I do think they are somewhat limited compared to the county. One example was a hoarding situation where a woman had many, many cats. They simply didn't have the capacity to pull all those animals in. So it took a period of time to resolve that issue. The county has that capacity. We noticed that they have quite a facility for cats and plenty of space. I suspect someday they will also have a space problem, but that's gonna take several years. So also the Animal Friends of the Valley, I know we get emails and they ask for donations for cans of food and that kind of thing to feed their animals. Bless their heart, I thank them for that. I think that's the right thing to do. However, again, it brings into question, if your concern is about the animals, the county's ability is unlimited. They certainly aren't going to have to go out and ask for donations. I'm glad Animal Friends of the Valley are willing to do that. I'm sorry that they have to do that, but they are a 501c3. Frankly, I think the decision is so close that I've been off and on about it. I've been for Animal Friends of the Valley, and then I was for the county, and then I was for Animal Friends of the Valley. So I don't believe that there is a huge difference here. I'm trying to, Greg August wanted me to make the argument, so I'll make the argument, but there were two incidents that happened within the last week that did concern me. One I was personally involved with. It was a dog named Ditto, and when a person picked a dog up and called Animal Friends of the Valley, they were informed where to put the dog. There was a chute. It was it's very well provided for. There was a place to put that dog that Animal Friends of the Valley provides. And she thought it was well done, and I thought it was well done. However, she then called the owner and to let him know that she'd found the dog because she saw a piece of literature stuck to a post. He went out there the next day, and they couldn't account for the dog. They said, we haven't seen that dog. Now, in all fairness, you're going to find incidents like that. Some people have said, well, that's happened to me at the county, and others will say, well, that's happened to me at Animal Friends of the Valley. I suspect over time things like that are going to happen at both facilities. It just appears to me that the probabilities are, if you're working with the county, they have a new facility. Some of the problems that the county had in the past is that when they sheltered the animals, they took them to Ramona. Ramona did have some problems. And now it's the county that handles those facilities, and they do it very well. There were a number of emails, and most of the emails I got were from people who had dealt with Animal Friends of the Valley, and they were positive. That would have been my response if somebody asked me. I am concerned about one that I got from a former employee of Animal Friends of the Valley, but that might have been a disgruntled employee. I don't know. But one group I am concerned about, and that is the rescue community. That does bother me. The rescue community is a group of committed volunteers that have to be licensed with the state. They get involved with these animals for one reason and one reason only. They have a passion. They have a passion for animals. And they're the ones on the front line, not the council, not the county, and not Animal Friends of the Valley. The people on the front line are the rescuers. They pick those animals up. They're the ones that go into the county or into the Animal Friends of the Valley, asked to pull those animals to keep from getting them euthanized, because in time, regardless of where you go, some of those animals are going to be euthanized. They try to save them. They find foster homes for them. These people are so dedicated that they're extremely passionate. It does concern me that it appears, from what I can see, is the entire rescue community, that group of people that are licensed and interface with the shelters, are all, that I found, favorable for the county. They felt that it would be a more probable nexus for us. The county has a licensing and spaying and neutering capacity that that Animal Friends of the Valley just doesn't have. That's why they don't deal with Quail Valley. That's some of the problems they have in Ramona. Bear in mind, you've got taxpayer dollars behind that, and for whatever reason, the county's given these people all the money they want. If you're talking about Menifee tax dollars, in spite of the differences between the two facilities, it's going to cost $75,000 more to go with Animal Friends of the Valley. I do think also that in trying to determine responsibility, if you're talking about business administration, it's better to go with one entity. Either do everything with Animal Friends of the Valley or do everything with the county. One of the reasons you have a mix-up oftentimes is because of miscommunication between the two parties. If you have one party, you're better served. I think regardless of the decision, we'll be well served in either case, but my vote would go, depending upon what the council wants to do, with the county.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody else have any comments at this juncture? I want to thank, first of all, Deputy Mayor Edgerton and Councilmember August for stepping up and getting their hands around this issue, and really peeled back all the issues and analyzed it from every angle that I think they possibly could have. And I want to thank you, Deputy Mayor, for going with me on the special reserve in our budget. I think it's our responsibility, just like to save money for our future construction of City Hall, is to save money for a future construction for our own operation. and I want to thank the rest of the council for allowing that to go forward with our budget. I thank you very much for all of your collective efforts on that. I too am concerned, though, just about the confusion factor here, and I remember back in May 4th of 2010, when I was on the council before, we had this issue, I think it was a customer service issue, where we divested ourselves from the county, from sheltering and control, and staff at the time recommended to split the service, go with AFV for the control, and the Ramona shelter at the time for sheltering services. And so that was a unanimous 5-0 vote at the time. And the confusion that has been created when we made the switch recently from Ramona to the county, I don't necessarily want to have that again. I'm okay with the way it is, and kind of like what you said, and you, Mr. August, is that I think whoever we're going to be with, there's going to be customer service issues from time to time. There's going to be mistakes that get made from time to time. We all make them. Every entity makes them. Every service organization makes them. And so from the standpoint of clarity now, and I'm going to stand with my vote that I originally cast on May 4th of 2010, and I'm going to cast a vote for Animal Friends of the Valley to continue this service. So that's my position. And with that said, I'll entertain a motion either way. What are we going to do?
I'll make the motion that the city execute the agreement for field services with AFE.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Deputy Mayor Edgerton,
No.
Councilmember Furman,
Aye.
Councilmember August,
Aye.
Councilmember Denver,
Aye.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well done to all, everybody. And just remember, we're all on the same team. We all care about Menifee, and we all care about our pets. Okay, where are we at on the agenda at this point? We have city attorney reports,
We have nothing of particular interest to report at this time.
city manager report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of council, we do have an update on community services, and I'll turn that over to Robert Lennox for the balance of the city manager report.
And ladies and gentlemen, as you're leaving the chamber, just keep in mind that we still have a business agenda left, and so keep it down for us. Thank you. Mr. Lennox.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Waiting for the PowerPoint to pop up. A couple of things.
You can't do all these things at one time, Madam Clerk?
Thank you very much. I'll keep it brief as the hour is getting late. Some things you've seen before, just latest iteration. A few of the things I'll touch on this evening, those 4 you see on the screen. In addition, though, some important dates, things to highlight. As you may, obviously, if you had a chance to go out this past weekend, a great event in the Independence Day celebration on Saturday. I understand that we may have broke some records in attendance. I don't have a head count quite as yet, or estimate it yet, but at the next update, we should be able to provide that. But a great event, wonderfully attended. In addition, coming up soon, and in my hot little hand, I do have a quick claim deed for transition of the ownership of the Case Anaceros Senior Center campus over to the city from the county. So effective July 1, which was yesterday, the Case Anaceros campus now is the property, responsibility, and valuable asset of the city of Menifee. So,
Yay.
in addition, 12th of July, there is movies in the park at Audie Murphy Ranch Park. Going to be screening Frozen, and then the following week on the 19th at E.L. Peterson, the Nut Job. So there's plenty of advertising out there right now about those. August 9th, there'll be additional updates about this coming up. National Night Out at Wheatfield Park. Obviously a partnership between the city, Valleywide, and our Sheriff Department, as well as other groups involved. Quick update on committees and commissions. The first meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Commission occurred on June 26th. Wonderful meeting, opportunity to meet all the new commissioners.
But we weren't there.
You were not there, that's true. We are intending to bring those folks to council at a future meeting for a formal introduction, and then In addition, Senior Advisory Committee met on the 24th, which was Tuesday, for their first meeting, and again, a chance to meet all those folks. Wonderful group of your appointees, all very interested in serving the city of Menifee. Lastly, Youth Advisory Committee, as you recall, it's 11 seats, all at large. We are doing recruitment, have been somewhat passively, but we'll ramp it up as we get close to the end of summer, as the kids get back in school, and then bring to this council those applications with recommendations from the Park and Recreation and Trails Commission on appointees for the council to select in September, and then a first meeting at the end of September.
Would you entertain a question at this point?
Absolutely.
About the YAC on the recruitment in August? What is your recruitment going to consist of? Are we just going to put something up in the newspaper and our website, or are we actually going to go to the leadership at our local schools and solicit their input?
Yeah, we canvass not only the newspapers posted in libraries, City Hall, of course, the centers, but also at the schools. We'll be sending flyers out to all the high schools, the colleges, because the age range is from 15 to 25.
Okay,
so,
thanks.
yes.
Mr. Denver?
Why did you say that the Youth Advisory Committee is going to be chosen by Parks and Recreation?
There's an interview process that was recommended by this council, I believe, when we formed the committee, to have the commission as part of the selection process.
To actually make the decisions on
Yeah,
that,
a recommendation
on that
to council.
committee.
Yes.
I think that's odd.
Well, I think
Are
you'll
you
still
confused?
you'll still have you'll still have an input when it comes to us for final approval.
Some capital improvement projects that we're continuing to work on. The assessment of the parks, several that we've now formally taken responsibility over with our partnership in Valleywide, have resulted in a lot of poor conditions in the facilities that we need to address, and that's taking some time, but it is getting done. Some of the signage that we talked about in prior updates, health and safety issues, aesthetic items, equipment repair, play structure, ground resurfacing. We have a grant currently to take care of that, rubberizing those ground surfaces, which will be moving on very quickly in the next couple of months. And then fixtures, finishes, and ADA accessibility. Some notable items, Audie Murphy Ranch Sports Park in the skate area, we had installed some security measures which have resulted in reduced amount of non-compliance with the park ordinances, particularly use of helmets and type of use of the park, so that's been a good outcome. Another update, we did just last week receive the final, we did receive the recycle grant vehicle, which you see there on the screen, which we can use for recycling efforts at various events and during cleanup days, both times of the year that we have those events. Some examples of the site amenities that we're trying to work into the park specifications are on here, and then of course a shot of the city booth from this weekend. Again, a great event. We are still working on the cost study analysis, which you're aware of. We've met with the consultant and have been doing collection of the expenses for each of the programs and facilities. In essence, we do want to come back with the actual report itself from our consultant, and then a fee schedule review for the council in August to consider proposed fees and any adjustments therein before adopting as a resolution.
Is the commission going to get a look at that study and that analysis and the fee schedule before we do?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yes. Programs and facilities as well will be, once adopted by council, incorporating that into both the city and Valley-wide's publicity for activities, classes, and for facility rentals. And then lastly, the operating service agreement. We've been meeting pretty regularly with Valley-wide to review the agreement. I have good news. We do have a signed, executed agreement from Valley-wide, and it incorporates the first 3 bullet points you see there, stuff we've reviewed before. There are a few outstanding items. Of course, the cost of services study that I mentioned, that'll be part of the scope, meaning they will be responsible for collecting revenues relative to classes and activities, which are set, those fees set by this council by resolution. And then there's pre-existing conditions in the parks which become part of that agreement, so that there's a base as a starting point and there's some understanding about the expectation for the maintenance standard moving forward. Lastly, although the base contract does cover basic services, activities, and maintenance, in discussions with Valleywide, we've noted that there are several areas that are not incorporated in that contract. Some include things like graffiti abatement, some pest control, things that we had anticipated incorporating the agreement are not currently. That agreement, the base agreement, equates to about $740,000 for a single year. So we will be returning to council with a itemized list of those items and estimated costs for those to expand or request additional appropriation for them. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, things are moving along. All right, very good. Hearing no questions, Mr. Manager, do you have any other updates?
No other items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. On to the future agenda requests from council members. Mr. Denver?
5 years ago or 4 years ago, we discussed a possibility of having a TV channel. Channel 3 was what it was just called at the time. And the idea is that we could broadcast not only our meetings live, but the schools and nonprofits could put their events on TV, city events. There's a real need for that. One, people have to wait some period of time to see these events, but also the nonprofits, when they do the events or city events, they're not very well publicized. And if they were on TV, the attendance the next year would be dramatically better. That's what happens in other cities. At that time, when we looked into that, since there is some complications, there's two different TV concerns, MediaCom and another different part of our town. I would ask if I could get a second to re-look into that. Last time it was $10,000. We had to have the equipment here and had to have a person put the anyway, big square
VCR.
thing, VCR thing, whatever, in there, and that was the problem. We didn't have the people, and we didn't have $10,000. I think we're growing up a little bit more, and I think it's time to seriously look into that. If anyone would agree with me.
I agree with you.
Second thing is that in Romaland, I've been spending an awful lot of time in Romaland, and they feel, did you know that when you go talk to the kids at the school, and I ask them, what city do you live in? They say Romaland. And I say, no, you live in Menifee, and they look at each other. They really don't have any feel for Menifee at all. The second thing is that the Romaland people, the only contact that they get with the city from their perspective is code enforcement at my request, coming out and kicking butt, as they say. Actually, they say it a little differently than that. But they don't like the city, the part that they know, and they don't know that they're part of the city. As an example of that I heard about again this last weekend was the fence that the county put up down Highway 74. It now has 10 8-foot holes in it after the county put it in at great expense. And when we asked the county to fix it, it's already been asked once, twice, 3 times, they just say we screwed up and we lost our money and we're not going to fix it. I think it's time for us to come up with a way of patching up this fence that was put up. Let me tell you why. I guarantee that those kids walking across that road, Highway 74, one of them is going to be killed. There's been a couple of incidents where adults, after drinking too much, have nearly been hit on that road, and the owners of the supermarket, that little AMP or whatever little place there, complains about that. They come over and then they leave drunk. I'm not arguing for alcohol. I'm arguing that we need those holes fixed, and we need a walkway across there and then repair them. This is really not taken care of. It's another example of the city of Menifee not taking serious care of Romaland. We never put up with that in Sun City. So if I could get a second, could we have somebody look into mechanisms to figure out how to fix that fence?
How far, how many holes are, that
8.
fence runs 2 miles?
Oh, no. It probably runs a mile maybe, but it had 6 holes in it, 4 holes for a while, 6 holes, and now 8 holes. And when I mean holes, I mean 8 foot down.
Are they like 50, 100 yards apart?
Yeah.
the hole?
Yeah.
So we have a motion, we have a second on that. Deputy Mayor seconded that to have a future agenda item on that topic, and maybe a staff report on what could and couldn't be done. Mr. Johnson, is that what you wanted to summarize? Okay. Was that it, Mr.?
I think I've spoken.
Okay. So, all right, your 2 items got on. Mr. Furman?
I would like to give direction to the attorney to address Mr. Metelko's concerns and return with a small report. If I could get a second on that, please. Metelko.
Could I ask for clarification of your motion? And I would.
I think he had concerns on
that one.
the legality of something.
Oh, on just that one ordinance?
Yeah, the one ordinance
that
that
appeared, he alleged
you'd have
that
to
it was
get
in
it from-
conflict, that our ordinance was in conflict with state law, I think is what his point was.
He quoted some numbers you
Yeah.
could get from the minutes, I
Yeah,
guess.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Edgerton?
Right, I just wanted to concur with Councilman Denver that I think it would be good if we, at some point, had a station and got televised at like Paris, et cetera, and Hemet. I think we can get as much as Paris and Hemet. Just a reminder of my own experience when a former city I represented did that, and for a while it took the council some time to accommodate to the camera because they were aware that they were on the camera. One council was irate because we wouldn't agree to getting a makeup person to work with the council before we went on camera. So cameras do marvelous things, but they also provide transparency, and I think that's what the whole thing's about. So
Makeup is lack of transparency.
Right, exactly. So in any event, I support your emotion, Councilman Denver.
Thank you, Mr. Edgerton. I have 2 things. The first is a follow-up to an email that I had sent to staff and copied to council. There's a lot of progress that's been made on the Line A project in the northeast part of town in the Roma Land area. And I think it would be time to have a staff report at some point in the future, whether it's, and I'm not in July, not in August, maybe September, whatever. I don't want to disrupt the priority of work, but I think it's time for all of us to get up on the same sheet of music on what's happening with Line A.
I agree.
Okay, thanks. The second one is, okay, this is, how do I set this one up? You can't second what I'm about ready to say, Mr. Furman, all right? So
Right.
just to give you a warning.
Oh.
Before this
I second
council, before this council was seated, the previous council had gone through a process whereby, through staff's effort, the previous city attorney, and the prescriptive rights issue of Holland Road, it got paved. The authority for Holland Road got paved. And at the time, I remember the discussion from the then city attorney, Fletcher, said that because Mr. Furman is on the council, that an administrative law judge would have to adjudicate the compensation piece for that road. And over, since December, since we were seated, we have not brought that back or elevated that. I would like, if I could get a second from somebody other than Mr. Furman for his own protection, if we could get a staff report from you on how that would actually work, or if the previous administration was wrong in their advice, too.
The issue was actually addressed by Mr. Fletcher and concurred in by the city attorney for Lake Elsinore, that the prescriptive right meant that it was already part of the city and that there was no need for compensation.
So there.
In other words, there was no taking.
Okay.
It was a prescriptive right that came with the original subdivision of the land, and therefore the city had, over those years, basically secured it, and it hadn't been challenged, and it came with the fact that there was originally a subdivision. So I would be happy to take a look at that. I did not look at that when
Could
it
you?
first came through.
Yeah, and Mr. Edgerton gave it a second. I just want to, in fairness, I mean, if, I remember the word compensation used with with an independent
There was
judge.
talk of that before that analysis went forward.
Okay.
And because there was, what was going to be required would be for the city to exercise its power of eminent domain. And because Mr. Furman is a member of the council, that's an issue that cannot go forward except through the special exception to the 1090 rule that does allow that kind of transaction to be conducted with an administrative law judge.
Okay, so if you could
But
just,
that was before the secondary analysis. But I will be happy to go through that.
take another look at, because there are other property owners besides, there's a total of
Sure.
4.
Sure.
Okay.
And all of that would apply to all of them.
Okay, all right, thank you very kindly. Are there any other matters? Great job. Reminder, we have 2 more meetings this month, the one on the 16th, and the regular, and then we took action to do the 30th of July for those 2 public hearings, and then we roll right into the first meeting in August, and I know staff's probably going to be, can't wait to have 3 meetings in a row on 3 Wednesdays.
Didn't we have something on the 9th?
No, that didn't,
Oh.
no. So with that being said, we are adjourned.